Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're headed to the Andes Mountains in South America.
To Peru specifically.
Right, to Peru.
To this incredible, incredible city, Machu Picchu.
This lost city of stone, built high up in the Andes.
A really, really amazing place. And we're going to learn some advanced English vocabulary along the way.
Yeah, so who discovered this place?
So it's this guy named Hiram Bingham back in 1911.
Wow, so over 100 years ago.
Yeah, like a real-life Indiana Jones. He was actually a professor at Yale.
Interesting.
And there are stories about him trying to clear the jungle around Machu Picchu with fire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, trying to reveal more of the city.
I guess back then they didn't know as much about preservation.
Exactly. But let's talk about Machu Picchu itself. Why is it so amazing?
I mean, just look at the pictures. It's built on top of a mountain.
It's incredible, so inaccessible, and it's not just the location.
Yeah, the Incas were amazing engineers.
They quarried stones from faraway mountains, transported them up these steep slopes.
And without modern tools. How did they do that?
We can only imagine each stone is cut and fitted so perfectly.
Truly an enduring monument.
A phrase that really captures the essence of this place.
It makes you think, what was it like to live there?
It was the brainchild of the Inca ruler, Pachacuti.
Brainchild. You mean he designed it?
Exactly. It was his vision brought to life. This incredible city hidden high in the Andes.
And it stood for centuries. So much work must have gone into building it.
Work. That's a really interesting word to think about.
How so?
Well, it can mean so many things depending on the context.
I guess so. I mean, in this case, it's about building a city, creating something.
Leaving your mark on the world.
So what kind of work did the people of Machu Picchu do?
What drove them? What was their purpose?
We have so many questions. And maybe some answers. But we'll get to those later in the deep dive.
It's fascinating, right? How the meaning of work can shift depending on who you ask.
Yeah, for some people, it's about earning money to survive.
Exactly. But for the Inca, building Machu Picchu, it was more than that.
It was about creating something that would last.
An enduring monument. And there's that word again.
Enduring.
Yeah, it's a powerful word. And it reminds us that this place, Machu Picchu, has survived for centuries.
And it's still standing, still inspiring awe. Just like the word inaccessible.
Oh, tell me more.
Well, we talked about how it's physically inaccessible.
High up in the mountains.
Yeah, but I was thinking about how the word can be used in other ways, like information that's inaccessible.
Ah, I see what you mean. Like secrets.
Exactly. Or emotions that are hard to reach. It's a word with so many layers.
That's the beauty of language, isn't it? One word can express so many different ideas.
And speaking of expressing ideas, let's talk about brainchild again.
Ah, yes. Pachacuti's brainchild.
It really highlights his vision, his creativity.
Machu Picchu was his idea, his creation.
And it changed the landscape, literally.
It shaped the mountains.
And it also shaped our understanding of the Inca.
Even though we still don't know exactly what it was used for.
Was it a palace? A temple? A fortress?
A site of great mystery.
And site is another interesting word.
It has so many meanings, depending on how you use it.
Like a construction site or a website.
Or in this case, an archaeological site. A place of historical importance.
Which brings us back to the Inca and their ability to adapt.
They had to adapt to the mountains.
To the climate. To the challenges of building something so grand.
And yet they did it. Their work endured.
It's inspiring, isn't it?
It makes you think about our own work, our own challenges.
And how we can overcome them with hard work and determination.
Like learning a new language. It takes effort.
It takes dedication. But the rewards are worth it.
Just like the rewards of visiting Machu Picchu.
Or even just learning about it.
Expanding our horizons.
Thinking about the connections between words, ideas, and history.
It's all connected.
You know, all this talk about Machu Picchu, it's really got me thinking about language.
Oh, how so?
Well, it's kind of like an enduring monument, too.
Interesting thought. What do you mean?
Like, even though languages change, they still hold pieces of the past.
Yeah, I see that. Words carry history with them.
Exactly. Like, take the word citadel, for example.
A citadel. It makes
Yeah.
you think of fortresses.
Yeah, like a strong place that's built for protection.
And even though we don't really build citadels anymore, the words still mean something to us.
It reminds us that people have always needed safety and security.
And some words feel as inaccessible as Machu Picchu itself.
True. If you don't know the language or the culture, some words can seem like a secret code.
But the more you learn, the more you can understand.
It's like you're unlocking new levels of meaning.
Exactly. You're building up your vocabulary, giving yourself more tools to use.
And that brings us back to work.
Work.
Yeah, we were talking about how it can be about more than just a job.
Right. It can be about purpose and leaving something behind.
And I think that applies to learning a language too.
It definitely takes work. Dedication.
But the rewards are huge. It opens up so many new possibilities.
You can connect with people from all over the world.
You can understand different cultures. So to everyone listening, I say this: keep learning, keep exploring.
Don't be afraid to try new things and challenge yourself.
Because there's a whole world out there waiting to be discovered. Just like Machu Picchu.
And who knows, maybe one day you'll even get to visit it yourself.
Until then, keep those brains working and those vocabularies growing. Hey there, ready to unlock some serious potential? We've got a collection of insights here, all about understanding what might be holding us back from those big goals, and even more exciting, what we can do about it. We're going to explore how fear, self-doubt, and even our everyday thoughts play a huge role in reaching our full potential.
It's amazing how much of our potential is tied to things we might not even realize we're doing. We'll be diving deep into how understanding our fears and motivations can lead to incredible breakthroughs.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
One of the biggest things I see is people struggling because they haven't really figured out their why. It's like having a destination in mind, but not knowing why you want to get there in the first place.
Exactly. It's not enough to just want something. You need that driving force behind it, the fuel that keeps you going, even when things get tough.
So it's more than just setting a goal. It's about understanding the deeper meaning behind it, right?
Absolutely. Think of it like this. If someone told you to make $1 million, you might get motivated for a bit. But if your loved one's life depended on making that million, you'd become unstoppable. That's the power of a strong why.
That's a powerful example. So how do we find our own compelling why? It's easy to get caught up in what we think we should want.
One technique is to ask yourself why, repeatedly. Let's say your goal is to get a promotion. Ask yourself, why do I want this promotion? Maybe it's for more money. Then ask, why is more money important? Maybe it's for financial security. Keep asking why until you hit that core emotional reason. Maybe it's to provide a better life for your family or have the freedom to travel. That's your driving force.
I love that. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion to get to the heart of what truly motivates us. Hey, speaking of peeling back the layers, what does compelling mean anyway?
Compelling means something so strong and interesting that you feel forced to pay attention. In this case, a compelling why is something that truly drives you to action even when facing obstacles.
Makes sense. Now let's talk about something that often stops us in our tracks. Fear. It seems like fear is a major roadblock for a lot of people.
Fear is a natural human emotion, but here's the thing. Most fears that hold us back from achieving our goals aren't based in actual danger. They're based on what our minds think might happen in the future.
So we're scared of things that haven't even happened yet. It's like our minds are playing tricks on us.
Exactly. Our minds are incredibly powerful. They can project us into a fearful future, triggering all sorts of physical reactions, anxiety, sweating, increased heart rate, even though the situation we're afraid of doesn't even exist yet.
So our bodies are reacting as if the fear is real, even though it's just a thought.
Precisely. But here's the key. If our minds can conjure up these negative scenarios, they can also imagine positive ones.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. Tell me more about that.
Instead of dwelling on what could go wrong, try visualizing the best possible outcome. Imagine yourself succeeding beyond your wildest dreams. If you're afraid of public speaking, picture yourself delivering a captivating presentation, feeling confident and engaging the audience. If you're afraid to start a business, envision the success and the pride of hitting that first $1 million in sales.
So it's about shifting our focus from fear to possibility. It's about training our minds to see the positive potential instead of getting caught up in the what-ifs.
Right, and this shift in perspective can have a huge impact on our actions. If we truly believe in the possibility of success, we're much more likely to take the necessary steps to achieve it.
That reminds me, I have a quick vocabulary question for you. What's the difference between visualizing and imagining? They seem similar.
You're right, they are very close in meaning. Imagining is broader, encompassing any thought or concept you create in your mind. Visualizing specifically involves creating a mental picture or movie like you're seeing it happen.
I get it. So we're not just thinking about success, we're actually picturing it. Now let's move on to something that plays a huge role in all of this. Our thoughts. I've heard it said that most of our thoughts are actually the same ones we had yesterday.
That's true. Studies show that around 90% of our thoughts are repetitive, and unfortunately, many of those thoughts are negative and unhelpful. They're like old tapes playing on repeat in our minds, often without us even realizing it.
So it's like we're stuck in these mental ruts, replaying the same worries and anxieties over and over again. No wonder we can feel stuck.
Exactly. But becoming aware of these thought patterns is the first step to changing them. It's like watching cars go by on a busy street. You see them, you acknowledge them, but you don't jump in front of each one. Just observe your thoughts without judgment.
So it's about creating some distance between ourselves and our thoughts, rather than getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And once you become more aware of your thoughts, you can start to evaluate them. Ask yourself, is this thought serving me? Is it helping me move towards my goals, or is it holding me back?
That's such a powerful question. It forces us to be more mindful and intentional about the thoughts we choose to entertain.
And the next step is consciously choosing a more empowering thought. It's like choosing a different path, one that leads to a more positive and fulfilling destination.
Can you give us an example of how this thought rewiring works in real life?
Sure. Let's say you catch yourself judging someone, maybe a coworker or a friend. Instead of indulging in that judgment, try finding 3 things you appreciate about that person. Maybe they have a great sense of humor, they're always willing to help, or they're incredibly dedicated to their work. This simple shift in focus can help you rewire your thinking towards a more positive and compassionate perspective.
And that's a great exercise. It's like we're choosing to focus on the good instead of the bad. And I bet that shift in perspective can have a ripple effect on our overall well-being.
Absolutely. What we focus on expands. By choosing more positive and empowering thoughts, we're essentially creating a more positive and fulfilling reality for ourselves. And speaking of creating a positive reality, let's talk about something that often gets in the way: procrastination.
Ugh, procrastination. We all struggle with it sometimes. What's the key to breaking free from that cycle of putting things off?
Procrastination often stems from a lack of a compelling why. We might have a vague desire to achieve something, but without that deep-seated reason, it's easy to let distractions take over.
So it goes back to that powerful why we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. When we have a strong why, the how often reveals itself naturally. We become driven, not just fleetingly motivated. Think back to that example of making $1 million. If your loved one's life depended on it, you wouldn't be sitting around procrastinating, would you? You'd be taking action, finding creative solutions, and doing whatever it took to make it happen.
That's a great point. It's like the urgency and clarity of our why cuts through all the excuses and distractions.
Exactly. So instead of focusing on all the reasons you can't do something, ask yourself, what's the most important reason I want to do this? Let that why be your driving force. Welcome back to our deep dive into unlocking your potential. It's amazing how much we can achieve when we tap into that inner drive.
I'm ready for more. We've covered so much ground already, but I'm feeling energized and eager to keep exploring these powerful ideas.
Great. Let's delve into a topic that often comes up when we talk about reaching our full potential: the illusion of arrival. Many people believe that achieving a certain goal, whether it's financial success, a dream job, or a perfect relationship, will automatically bring lasting happiness and peace.
Ah, yes, the classic "I'll be happy when" syndrome. We set these external milestones thinking they hold the key to our happiness, but often that's not the case at all.
Exactly. Think about it. How often have you reached a goal only to find yourself quickly setting a new one, still searching for that elusive sense of fulfillment?
It happens all the time. It's like we're on this never-ending treadmill, constantly striving and chasing, but never quite arriving at our destination. So what's the answer then? If achieving goals doesn't guarantee happiness, where do we find that lasting sense of fulfillment?
True fulfillment comes from within, not from external achievements. It's about cultivating a sense of peace, purpose, and self-acceptance that transcends the ups and downs of life.
That makes so much sense. It's about finding that inner anchor that keeps us grounded amidst the storms of life, rather than relying on external factors to bring us happiness. But how do we cultivate that inner connection? It seems like we live in a world that's constantly pulling us outward, demanding our attention and bombarding us with distractions.
You're absolutely right. We live in a world of information overload, constant stimulation, and endless distractions. It's no wonder so many of us feel disconnected from ourselves. That's why carving out space for silence and introspection is so crucial.
I've heard a lot about the benefits of meditation and mindfulness, but honestly, the idea of sitting in silence can be a bit intimidating. It's like all those thoughts and emotions I've been pushing down suddenly come rushing to the surface.
It's true that silence can be uncomfortable at first. Our minds are used to the constant chatter, and when that chatter quiets down, we might feel a wave of anxiety, boredom, or even sadness. But that's all part of the process. Those uncomfortable feelings are like clouds passing through the sky. Acknowledge them, observe them, but don't get attached to them.
So it's about becoming the observer of our thoughts and emotions rather than getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And as we become more comfortable with silence, we start to tap into a deeper level of awareness. We begin to connect with our inner wisdom, our intuition, and that sense of peace that resides within us.
I like the image of connecting with our inner wisdom. It's like we all have this incredible source of knowledge and guidance within us, but we often get so caught up in the external noise that we lose touch with it.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And as we cultivate that inner connection, we start to see ourselves and the world around us with more clarity and compassion. We begin to understand that we are both spiritual beings and physical beings interconnected with everything around us.
That brings to mind something we talked about earlier, the power of asking for help. I used to think asking for help was a sign of weakness, but I'm realizing it actually takes a lot of strength and courage to admit we need support.
I completely agree. Asking for help is not about giving up or admitting defeat. It's about recognizing that we are part of a community and that community is there to support us when we need it.
It's like we're all pieces of a puzzle, and when we come together, we create a beautiful, complete picture. Speaking of pieces of a puzzle, can you explain what interconnected means in this context?
Interconnected means that we are all linked together in some way, like threads in a giant web. Our actions and choices affect not only ourselves, but also the people around us and the world at large.
That's a powerful reminder. It makes me think about the impact we have on each other, both positive and negative. So how do we cultivate a more supportive and interconnected community?
It starts with being willing to be vulnerable and authentic with each other. It's about creating safe spaces where we can share our struggles and triumphs without fear of judgment. And it's about showing up for each other, offering support and encouragement when it's needed.
It sounds like creating this kind of community requires us to be more open and compassionate, both with ourselves and with others.
Absolutely. And that openness and compassion can lead to incredible growth and transformation, both individually and collectively.
This is such a rich and insightful conversation. I'm feeling so inspired to cultivate more self-awareness, connect with my inner wisdom, and build a more supportive community around me.
That's fantastic to hear. Remember, it's all about progress, not perfection. Take small steps, celebrate your wins, and never stop learning and growing.
Now, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I'm curious about something you mentioned earlier, the idea that everything is your fault. I know that can be a controversial statement, but I'm intrigued by the wisdom behind it. Can you elaborate on that a bit more?
Of course. Now, it's important to clarify that this statement isn't meant to be taken literally. It's not about blaming ourselves for everything that happens in our lives, but rather about taking ownership of our choices and responses.
So it's about recognizing that we have the power to choose how we react to the events and circumstances in our lives.
Exactly. It's about shifting from a victim mentality to a creator mentality. Instead of feeling helpless and at the mercy of external forces, we realize that we have the ability to shape our own destiny.
That's a powerful shift. It's about taking responsibility for our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions, rather than blaming others or feeling like we're a victim of circumstance.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that we have the power to choose how we respond to life's challenges.
But what about things that are truly outside of our control, like accidents or illnesses? Are you saying those are our fault too?
Not at all. There are many things in life that we simply cannot control, but even in those situations, we still have the power to choose how we respond.
So it's about focusing on what we can control, even in the midst of difficult or challenging circumstances.
Exactly. It's about finding that inner strength and resilience to navigate life's ups and downs with grace and courage. And that brings us to another important point, the importance of self-compassion.
Yes. We've talked about being kind to ourselves, but I think it's worth emphasizing. What exactly does self-compassion mean?
Self-compassion is about treating ourselves with the same kindness, care, and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend. It's about recognizing that we are all imperfect human beings, and that's okay.
It's about silencing that inner critic and replacing it with a voice of love and support. But how do we actually do that? It's easy to get caught up in self-criticism, especially when we make mistakes or face setbacks.
One helpful practice is to talk to yourself as you would talk to a friend who's going through a tough time. Imagine your friend comes to you feeling discouraged or upset about a mistake they made. What would you say to them? Would you criticize them, judge them, or tell them they're not good enough?
Of course not. I'd offer them words of comfort, understanding, and encouragement. I'd remind them that everyone makes mistakes and that this one mistake doesn't define them as a person.
Exactly. And that's the same kind of kindness and compassion we need to extend to ourselves. Instead of beating ourselves up for our mistakes, we can choose to learn from them and move forward with greater wisdom and resilience.
So it's about being our own best friend, offering ourselves that same level of support and understanding that we would offer to someone we love.
Precisely. And as we cultivate self-compassion, we create a more loving and supportive inner environment where we can truly thrive and grow.
This is such a powerful reminder. It's so easy to get caught up in the pressure to be perfect. But true growth comes from embracing our imperfections and treating ourselves with kindness. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I have a quick vocabulary question for you. What does resilience mean in this context?
Resilience refers to our ability to bounce back from adversity, setbacks, and challenges. It's that inner strength that allows us to face difficult situations with courage and determination, and to emerge from those experiences stronger and wiser.
That's a great definition. It makes me think about all the challenges I've overcome in my life and how those experiences have shaped me into the person I am today.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that resilience is not something we're born with. It's something we develop over time through our experiences and how we choose to respond to them.
So it's about cultivating that inner strength and flexibility to adapt and grow even when life throws us curveballs.
Absolutely. And as we cultivate resilience, we become better equipped to navigate life's inevitable challenges with grace and determination.
This has been such an enlightening conversation. I'm feeling inspired to embrace my imperfections, practice self-compassion, and cultivate greater resilience. I can't wait to see what else we uncover in the final part of our deep dive. Welcome back. I'm ready to wrap up this incredible deep dive into unlocking our potential.
It's been an amazing journey exploring these powerful concepts together.
We've talked about the importance of finding our why, rewiring our thoughts, cultivating self-compassion, and embracing our imperfections.
And we've touched on how recognizing the illusion of arrival and connecting with our inner wisdom can lead to a more fulfilling life.
It's a lot to take in, but I'm feeling so inspired to put all this wisdom into practice. Where do we even begin?
Remember, it's not about making drastic changes overnight. It's about taking small, consistent steps towards creating the life we truly desire.
So it's more like a marathon than a sprint. We need to pace ourselves and focus on sustainable changes.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful ways to create lasting change is through the power of practice. Just like we wouldn't expect to become a master pianist overnight, cultivating self-awareness, rewiring our thoughts, and connecting with our true selves takes time and consistent effort.
It's like building a muscle. The more we exercise those mental and emotional muscles, the stronger they become.
Precisely. And the key is to find those practices that resonate with you and incorporate them into your daily routine, whether it's meditation journaling, spending time in nature, or simply taking a few moments each day to pause and reflect, experiment, and discover what works best for you.
It's about creating those rituals that nourish our souls and help us stay connected to our inner wisdom.
Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder. If fear is often an illusion, what incredible things might you achieve if you weren't afraid to fail?
Wow, that's a powerful question. It makes me realize how much of what holds us back is our own self-doubt and fear of failure. But what if we could shift our perspective and see failure as an opportunity for growth and learning?
Imagine the possibilities. What dreams might you pursue if you knew that failure wasn't the end, but simply a stepping stone on the path to success?
That's a really inspiring way to frame it.
Yeah.
Reminds me of something we talked about earlier, the importance of resilience. Maybe facing our fears and learning from our setbacks is how we build that resilience muscle.
You're absolutely right. Every challenge we overcome, every mistake we learn from, makes us stronger and more capable of facing whatever life throws our way.
This has been such an incredible journey. I'm feeling so empowered to step into my full potential, embrace the unknown, and create a life filled with purpose and joy.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Surround yourself with a supportive community, ask for help when you need it, and never stop believing in your ability to achieve amazing things.
Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and insights with us. It's been an honor to dive deep with you.
The pleasure was all mine. And to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep unlocking your incredible potential.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving deep today into something I think a lot of you will find really useful.
Absolutely.
We're going to be looking at how to express yourself with more nuance,
Mm-hmm.
especially when it comes to, like, how often you do things in English.
Right.
So,
Yeah, like going beyond, just always and never.
Exactly.
Those basic words.
Yeah.
And sort of unlocking a richer vocabulary.
Yeah, because think about it.
Yeah.
We all have routines and habits
Absolutely.
and things we do every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we actually describe those things in English in a way that sounds really natural and fluent?
Yeah. Well, one way to sort of illustrate this is by thinking about your morning routine,
Mm-hmm.
Imagine someone asks you, how often do you brew a pot of coffee?
Well, that's a good one.
Would you say always sometimes or, something else?
Yeah. And that actually reminds me of something that was interesting in the research that we're looking at for this deep dive.
Okay.
It was talking about how some people have these really detailed morning routines,
Mm-hmm.
Blow drying, flat ironing, battling the frizz,
Uh-huh.
whereas other people just kind of like splash some water on their face and they're out the door.
Yeah, totally different.
So,
Yeah, so let's start by looking at the word frequently.
okay, frequently.
So what do you think when you hear the word frequently?
I think it's something that happens pretty often.
Yeah, exactly. So think of frequently as meaning something that happens around 75% of the time, or maybe even a little bit more.
Oh, okay.
It's like that friend who's always a little late,
Yeah.
but you still love them because they show up most of the time.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So I might say, like, I frequently forget my reusable shopping bags and end up with like a mountain of plastic ones.
Yes,
Yeah.
perfect example.
Oops.
Now let's contrast that with seldom.
Okay.
Seldom has a more negative connotation.
Yeah.
So it means something happens almost never.
Okay.
It's like that dish that you only make once a year for like a special occasion.
Okay. So I might say, like, I seldom eat fast food, but I frequently crave it.
Maybe
Maybe I should rethink my eating habits.
Maybe just a little.
A little bit, yeah.
But you've got the idea.
Yeah.
Now, what about the word often?
Oh, often, yeah.
Do you use that word often?
I do.
Yeah.
It feels like kind of like my go-to word
Mm-hmm.
when I'm describing things I do regularly.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that some people pronounce it often and other people pronounce it often.
Oh, that's a good observation.
Is there like a right way?
Both pronunciations are perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
It's simply a matter of regional variation.
Okay.
Like tomato versus tomato.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's some flexibility.
Absolutely.
That's reassuring, actually, for English learners.
Yes.
But what about the difference between often and frequently?
Okay.
They seem pretty similar.
Yeah, they are closely related.
Okay.
So often suggests something that happens regularly, probably around 70 to 80% of the time.
Okay.
So it's a bit more general than frequently.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you might say, I often go for walks in the evening,
Yeah.
meaning it's a regular part of your routine,
Yeah.
but there might be some exceptions.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's like a broader category often.
Exactly.
And frequently is more specific.
Exactly.
Got it.
Now let's add another word to the mix, usually.
Okay, usually, what are the nuances of that one?
Okay, so usually implies something happens consistently,
Mm-hmm.
but not always.
Okay.
It's somewhere between often and always.
Okay.
Maybe around like 60 to 80% of the time.
Uh-huh.
Think of it as your go-to choice, but you're open to other options.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I say I usually have oatmeal for breakfast,
Yeah.
it means that's like my typical choice.
Yeah,
But, some mornings I might go for a smoothie or some eggs instead.
exactly. Precisely.
Okay.
Yeah, it's about establishing a pattern,
Right.
but with the understanding that there's some flexibility built in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. And it makes me think of another word that we often hear, which is regularly. So what's the distinction there?
Regularly is an interesting one.
Okay.
It suggests a more structured routine,
Uh-huh.
a set schedule,
Okay.
but with the possibility of occasional exceptions.
Gotcha.
It's like having a gym membership.
Right.
You aim to go regularly,
Yeah.
but life can sometimes get in the way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I see the difference now. It's like usually is about personal preference,
Uh-huh.
but regularly implies a more like deliberate plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all these words that we've discussed so far, frequently, seldom, often, usually regularly, they all help us paint a clearer picture of how often we do things.
Yeah, it's like having all these shades of gray to work with instead of just like black and white.
Oh, I love
Yeah.
that analogy.
Right.
Yes. And, we can add even more depth to our descriptions by using specific phrases that convey frequency as well. Oh, like what? Okay, well, there's the straightforward every day,
Yeah.
which means exactly what it says, something you do without fail 7 days a week. But then we have phrases like every other day or every second day,
Okay.
which indicate an alternating pattern.
Right. So I might say, like, I go grocery shopping every other day.
Exactly.
Meaning, like, I go on Monday,
Yes.
skip Tuesday,
Uh-huh.
go again on Wednesday, and so
Oh,
on.
that's exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah, these phrases are particularly helpful when describing routines or habits that don't occur daily.
Okay. And what about those more whimsical phrases like every now and then or from time to time?
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Those are perfect for describing those things that we do sporadically without a fixed schedule. You know, they add a touch of spontaneity to our language.
Right. Like, I might say every now and then I get the urge to bake a batch of cookies from scratch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not a regular occurrence, but it happens often enough to be worth mentioning.
Yeah. I'm starting to see how all of these adverbs and phrases, when you're used correctly,
Right.
can really enhance our ability to express ourselves in
Absolutely.
English.
It's all about choosing the words that best reflect our individual habits,
Yeah.
preferences, and experiences.
And speaking of experiences, the material that we were diving into also highlighted some vocabulary
Yes.
that might be useful for English learners.
Yeah.
For example, the phrase, brew a pot of coffee,
Yes.
right? And I remember you explaining that pot in this context
Uh-huh.
refers to a specific type of container
Yeah.
that's used for making coffee,
Exactly.
right? It's not just any pot.
Right.
It's a coffee pot designed to brew multiple servings.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a helpful clarification.
Yeah.
And then there's blow dry,
Yes.
which means using a hair dryer
Uh-huh.
to dry and style your hair.
And related to that, we have flat iron, which
Right.
refers to a tool used to straighten hair.
Okay, these are all great examples of everyday vocabulary
Yeah.
that might not be immediately obvious to someone learning English.
You're absolutely right. And these words are often used in conjunction with the adverbs and phrases that we've been discussing.
Right.
For example, someone might say, I usually blow dry my hair,
Mm-hmm.
but every now and then I let it air dry.
I love that example because it shows how we can combine these different elements of language
Yeah.
to create more nuanced and expressive sentences.
Exactly. It's all about building a toolbox of vocabulary
Right.
and grammatical structures that you can use confidently in various situations.
And speaking of building a toolbox, I think we have one more set of words
Yes, we do.
to explore from our research materials.
Indeed, we do. These words are specifically related to hair texture,
Oh, okay.
and they might be new to some learners.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are they?
The words are frizz and frizzy.
Cool.
They describe a type of hair texture that tends to be unruly
Oh,
with lots of flyaway strands.
okay.
It's often caused by humidity or rain.
So it's the opposite of sleek and smooth.
Exactly.
Got it. Yeah.
And, you know, the way people deal with frizz can vary greatly.
Well, some embrace it, while others spend a lot of time and effort trying to tame it.
It's fascinating how something as simple as hair texture can be described
Yeah.
in so many different ways.
Exactly.
And it reminds us that language is constantly evolving
Uh-huh.
to reflect our experiences and the world around us.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to a fun challenge for our listeners today.
Ooh, a challenge. I
Yes.
love it.
Are you ready?
Hit me with it.
All right, here it is. Think about your own morning routine or even your evening routine
Okay.
and try to describe it using as many of the adverbs and phrases we've discussed today as possible.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's like a mini test to see how well we've absorbed all this
Sure.
great vocabulary.
Totally.
Yeah, and to make it even more fun, imagine you're describing your routine to a friend who's learning English.
Uh-huh.
So how would you explain those little quirks and habits that make your routine unique?
I love that idea.
Yeah. It's like we're not just learning words. We're also sharing a glimpse into our lives.
Precisely, language is all about connection, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I think this challenge is a great way to put that into practice.
I totally agree. And for those who are feeling extra brave,
Yeah.
why not share your routine description on social media?
Oh, I love that.
Right, we can even start a hashtag like MyTimeAdverbs.
Brilliant.
I can't wait to see what everybody comes up with.
Me too. It's always so inspiring to see how creative people get with language.
Absolutely. And, this whole conversation has got me thinking about something.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've talked a lot about how these adverbs and phrases shape our perception of time in English.
Right.
But I'm curious, how do these concepts translate into other languages?
Yeah.
Are there any time-related words that have no direct English equivalent?
That's such a fascinating question.
Yeah.
It really highlights how language is so deeply intertwined with culture.
Yeah.
And it makes you realize how much we can learn about the world simply by exploring different linguistic perspectives.
Exactly. So as you go about your day,
Yeah.
maybe while you're usually enjoying your afternoon coffee,
Right.
or seldom indulging in a late-night snack,
Uh-huh.
I encourage you to ponder that question.
Yeah.
How does your native language express the nuances of time?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any words or phrases that capture a feeling or a concept
Yeah.
that's unique to your culture?
It's a thought-provoking way to end our deep dive today.
Absolutely.
And who knows, it might even spark some new language learning adventures along the way.
Totally. So
Yeah.
until next time, happy exploring, everyone. And don't forget to share your My Time adverbs routines with us.
Yes.
We can't wait to see them.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. So usually implies something happens consistently, but not always. It sits somewhere between often and always, maybe around like 60 to 80% of the time. Think of it as your go-to choice, but you're
Yeah.
open to other options.
Okay, so if I say I usually have oatmeal for breakfast, it means that's like my typical choice.
Right.
But, some mornings I might go for a smoothie or some eggs instead.
Precisely, yeah. It's about establishing a pattern, but with the understanding that there's some flexibility built in.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. And it makes me think of another word that we often hear, which is regularly.
Okay, regularly.
What's the distinction there?
Regularly is an interesting one. It suggests a more structured routine, a set schedule, but with the possibility of occasional exceptions.
Gotcha.
It's like having a gym membership. You aim to go regularly.
Right.
But life can sometimes get in the way.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I see the difference now. It's like usually it's about personal preference, but regularly implies a more like deliberate plan.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all these words that we've discussed so far, frequently, seldom, often, usually regularly, they all help us paint a clear picture of how often we do things.
Yeah, it's like having all these shades of gray to work with instead of just like black and white.
Oh, I love that analogy. Yes. And, we can add even more depth to our descriptions by using specific phrases that convey frequency as well.
Oh, like what?
Okay, well, there's the straightforward every day,
Yeah.
which means exactly what it says and something you do without fail 7 days a week.
Uh-huh.
But then we have phrases like every other day or every second day,
Okay.
which indicates an alternating pattern.
Right. So I might say like I go grocery shopping every other day.
Exactly.
Meaning like I go on Monday,
Yes,
skip Tuesday, go again on Wednesday, and so on.
that's exactly right. Yeah, these phrases are particularly helpful when describing routines or habits that don't occur daily.
Okay, and what about those more whimsical phrases like every now and then or from time to time?
Yes, those are perfect for describing those things that we do sporadically without a fixed schedule. They add a touch of spontaneity to our language.
Right. Like I might say every now and then I get the urge to bake a batch of cookies from scratch.
Exactly. It's not a regular occurrence, but it happens often enough to be worth mentioning.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how all of these adverbs and phrases, when they're used correctly, can really enhance our ability to express ourselves in English.
Absolutely. It's all about choosing the words that best reflect our individual habits, preferences, and experiences. And, speaking of experiences, the material that we're diving into also highlights some vocabulary that might be especially useful for English learners, for example. There's the phrase brew a pot of coffee.
Right, and I remember you explaining that pot in this context refers to a specific type of container that's used for making coffee.
Exactly. It's not just any pot, but a coffee pot designed to brew multiple servings.
Yeah, that's a helpful clarification. And then there's blow dry, which means using a hairdryer to dry and style your hair.
Yes, and related to that, we have flat iron, which refers to a tool used to straighten hair.
Okay. These are all great examples of everyday vocabulary that might not be immediately obvious to someone learning English.
You're absolutely right, and these words are often used in conjunction with the adverbs and phrases that we've been discussing. For example, someone might say, I usually blow dry my hair, but every now and then I let it air dry.
I love that example because it shows how we can combine these different elements of language to create more nuanced and expressive sentences.
Exactly. It's all about building a toolbox of vocabulary and grammatical structures that you can use confidently in various situations.
And speaking of building a toolbox, I think we have one more set of words to explore from our research materials.
Indeed, we do. These words are specifically related to hair texture, and they might be new to some learners.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. What are they?
The words are frizz and frizzy. They describe a type of hair texture that tends to be unruly with lots of flyaway strands. It's often caused by humidity or rain.
So it's the opposite of sleek and smooth.
Exactly. And, the way people deal with frizz can vary greatly. Some embrace it, while others spend a lot of time and effort trying to tame it.
It's fascinating how something as simple as hair texture can be described in so many different ways, and it reminds us that language is constantly evolving to reflect our experiences and the world around us.
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to a fun challenge for our listeners today.
Ooh, a challenge.
I love it.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
Hit me with it.
All right, here it is. Think about your own morning routine or even your evening routine and try to describe it using as many of the adverbs and phrases we've discussed today as possible.
Ooh, that's a good one. It's like a little mini test to see how well we've absorbed all this great vocabulary.
Exactly. And to make it even more fun, imagine you're describing your routine to a friend who's learning English. So how would you explain those little quirks and habits that make your routine unique?
I love that idea. It's like we're not just learning words, we're also like sharing a glimpse into our lives.
Precisely, language is all about connection, isn't it? And I think this challenge is a great way to put that into practice.
I totally agree. And for those who are feeling extra brave, why not share your routine description on social media? Oh, I love that.
We could even start a hashtag like MyTimeAdverbs.
Brilliant. I can't wait to see what everyone comes up with.
Me too. It's
Yeah.
always so inspiring to see how creative people get with language. And, you know, this whole conversation has got me thinking about something.
Oh, what's that?
Well, we've talked a lot about how these adverbs and phrases shape our perception of time in English.
Right.
But I'm curious, how do these concepts translate into other languages? Are there any time-related words that have no direct English equivalent?
That's such a fascinating question. It really highlights how language is so deeply intertwined with culture. And it makes you realize how much we can learn about the world simply by exploring different linguistic perspectives.
Exactly. So as you go about your day, maybe while you're usually enjoying your afternoon coffee or
Yeah.
seldom indulging in a late-night snack, I encourage you to ponder that question. How does your native language express the nuances of time? Are there any words or phrases that capture a feeling or a concept that's unique to your culture?
It's a thought-provoking way to end our deep dive today. And who knows, it might even spark some new language learning adventures along the way.
Absolutely. So until next time, happy exploring, everyone. And don't forget to share your My Time Adverbs routines with us. We can't wait to see them.
Yes, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Ready to dive deep today?
Absolutely. Always ready.
So we're exploring just in time today.
Fascinating philosophy it is.
It's all about efficiency, right?
Yeah, like a well-oiled machine. Everything arriving exactly when it's needed.
No wasted space, no wasted time.
Exactly. And you know what's funny?
What's that?
Most people think JIT is, a Japanese invention.
Yeah, Toyota and all that, right?
Right. But the story's a little different.
Really? So where did it really come from?
Well, it actually started right here in America.
You kidding?
Nope. Ford Motor Company, they were the pioneers.
Wow, never would guess. So Ford was doing it first.
They were experimenting, early 20th century, streamlining, minimizing waste, the whole 9 yards.
And then Toyota came along.
Yeah, after World War II, they were looking for ways to boost their efficiency.
Interesting. So both trying to solve similar problems?
Exactly. On opposite sides of the world. And get this,
What?
Toyota got some JIT inspiration from, get this, an American grocery chain.
A grocery chain. Seriously.
Yep. Piggly Wiggly, of all places.
Wait.
They saw how Piggly Wiggly managed inventory, only ordering what they needed, keeping shelves stocked, but, avoiding excess.
Wow, that's amazing. Who knew grocery shopping could be so revolutionary?
Right.
What exactly did they take away from that, though?
They saw how minimizing storage, minimizing waste, led to big improvements in efficiency, and they thought, hey, we can apply this to making cars.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But how does JIT actually work? What are the key parts?
It boils down to two main things: reducing lead times and super strict quality control.
Lead times. Remind me what those are again.
Basically, the time it takes to go from wanting something to having it. Two types: production lead time, so how long to make it,
Okay, got it.
and delivery lead time, how long to get it where it needs to go.
So, like, if I order a custom-made desk, production lead time is the building.
Yep. And delivery is getting it to your house.
Exactly.
JIT wants to shrink both of those times, like as much as possible. Get rid of any delays, any bottlenecks.
So the whole process, from order to delivery, is lightning fast.
Exactly. You could pick suppliers nearby to speed up delivery,
Right.
or redesign your factory layout, so things travel less during production.
Wow, that's smart. So you could be super agile, respond quickly to demand.
Absolutely. But lead times are just one part. Don't forget quality control.
Right, because what good is a fast delivery if it's all messed up?
Exactly. JIT can't tolerate mistakes. One bad part can stop the whole production line.
Like a domino effect, right?
Exactly. So JIT focuses on building strong relationships with suppliers, having really strong quality checks.
So quality is everyone's responsibility from the very beginning.
Exactly, rather than trying to fix things at the end. But, this puts a lot of pressure on suppliers.
I bet it does. But it also pushes them to improve, I guess.
It does. It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
You're right. No system is perfect.
So are there downsides to this efficiency obsession?
Well, sometimes streamlining can lead to redundancies.
Redundancies.
Yeah.
Like extra files on my computer.
Not quite. It's a business term, actually. It means job losses.
Wait, JIT can cause people to lose their jobs.
Sometimes, yeah. If you streamline things, you might need fewer workers.
So the quest for efficiency can backfire.
In a way, yeah. It's a balance companies have to find.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
So if a company does implement JIT, how can they do it responsibly?
That's the key question. It can't just be about profits. It's about people, too. Finding a sustainable way that benefits everyone.
That's a lot to think about. JIT is powerful, but it's not a magic solution.
You got it. It needs careful thought and implementation to work properly.
This is fascinating, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
Oh, there's so much more to explore. Ready for the next level.
Absolutely, bring it on.
Back again for more on Just in Time. Before we dive into, the nuts and bolts of how JIT actually works, in real life.
Yeah, sure.
Let's take a step back. Look at the bigger picture for a second.
Okay, zoom out for me. What's the context?
Well, JIT, it's not just some random idea, right?
Right.
It's part of this bigger trend in business and manufacturing. Think about the early 1900s. Mass production was king.
Yeah, companies churning out tons of identical products.
Exactly. Efficiency was all about economies of scale, right?
Ford's assembly lines, that kind of thing.
Bingo. Revolutionary stuff back then. But as things changed,
How so?
well, people wanted more variety, more choices,
Makes sense.
and mass production.
Yeah.
It wasn't so flexible.
Right, if you got tons of stuff in stock and suddenly nobody wants it.
Exactly. Big financial risk, waste of resources, too.
So JIT came along as a kind of a response to that.
You got it. A total shift away from the old ways. It's all about lean manufacturing, cutting waste, being flexible, making stuff only when there's a need.
JIT is like the evolution of manufacturing, huh?
Exactly. From mass production to something much more nimble.
Agile, responsive.
Right. It's not just efficiency. It's about adapting quickly.
Yeah.
To market changes, to what customers actually want.
So JIT lets companies be more,
Nimble, quick on their feet.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get back to, the practical stuff.
Sure.
Lead times and quality control, the two big pillars of JIT. How do companies actually make those happen?
So one key piece of the puzzle is Kanban. It's Japanese, means signboard or visual signal.
Kanban. Rings a bell. Isn't that like a project management thing?
You're close. It started in Toyota factories, actually.
Yeah.
A visual system for managing workflow, inventory, all that.
So like signals for when to make more stuff.
Yeah. So you don't end up with mountains of parts just sitting around.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Paint me a picture. How does it work on the factory floor?
All right. Imagine a bunch of workstations, right?
Uh-huh.
Each one's a different stage in the production process. Say we're making bicycles.
Okay, bicycle.
One station's for assembling the frames, another's for the wheels, and so on.
Got it. Each station has its own job.
Right. Now, instead of some big boss telling everyone how much to make,
Yeah.
Kanban uses these visual cues to trigger production.
Like actual signs or something.
Exactly. Each station has these bins for parts. When a bin's empty,
It's like a signal.
yeah, a Kanban card goes to the previous station saying, hey, we need more of these.
Well, this is like a chain reaction.
Exactly. Parts are only made when they're actually needed. No huge stockpiles.
That's really clever. So it kind of regulates itself.
Yep. And the cool thing is Kanban isn't just for physical stuff. It can be used for any workflow, even digital stuff.
Like managing tasks for a software project.
Exactly. You have these virtual Kanban boards, track tasks, responsibilities, see the progress.
So JIT is not just about factories and cars.
Nope. It's a way of thinking. It can apply to anything where efficiency matters.
This is blowing my mind. Okay, so we've got waste reduction, Kanban.
Yeah.
What else is crucial to JIT?
Well, there's this huge emphasis on continuous improvement.
Like always trying to do better.
You got it. Good enough. Doesn't cut it in JIT. Always looking for ways to, cut waste, shrink those lead times, improve quality.
It's a constant striving for perfection.
In a way, yeah. But it's not about being perfect, more about making small improvements all the time.
I like that. progress over perfection. How do companies actually put that into practice, though?
Well, you got to create a culture where everyone feels like they can speak up, share ideas for improvement.
Like a suggestion box?
Yeah, something like that. But there's also this systematic approach to problem solving. One of the big tools is the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle.
Plan, Do, Check, Act. Another cycle. Break it down for me.
It's pretty simple, actually. First, you plan a change.
Okay.
Then you do it, implement it on a small scale. Then you check, see if it's working.
Analyze the results?
Yep. And finally, you ACT. If it works, you make it standard. If not, back to the drawing board.
So like a science experiment.
Exactly. Test, analyze, adjust. That's how companies can constantly refine their processes, get closer to their goals.
This is all starting to click now. GIT is like a whole philosophy, not just a set of rules.
You got it. It's a way of thinking, a culture, a mindset that affects the whole business.
Mind blown. We've covered so much ground. The history, the principles, how it works in real life.
And we're not done yet. Ready to explore the final frontier of just-in-time.
Absolutely. What else have you got for me? Okay, so we've really gone deep on just-in-time now. From, those surprising American beginnings to all those core principles, minimizing waste, maximizing efficiency. And we even talk about some of the potential downsides, too.
Right. And now we got to tackle the big question.
The big one, huh?
Yeah. What does all this mean, for you? How can knowing about JIT actually help you? Like, in the real world, in business, even just in, everyday life?
Okay, yeah, bring it home for us.
Sure.
Why should we care about JIT?
Well, think about all those core principles we've been talking about. Eliminating waste, streamlining processes, focusing on quality, being adaptable, always striving to, improve things.
Yeah.
Those are valuable ideas no matter what you do, running a company, managing a team, even just trying to be more productive, in your own life.
I see. Yeah, it's not just about factory floors and assembly lines.
Exactly. Take waste, for example.
Yeah.
In JIT, waste isn't just, physical stuff. It's anything that doesn't add value to the customer, really.
Okay.
Could be unnecessary steps in a process, pointless meetings, even just too much information,
Information overload. The struggle is real.
It is. So it's about being mindful,
Right.
how we use our time, our resources, making sure everything we do has a purpose, helps us reach the goal.
I like that. Mental decluttering for your work, basically.
Exactly. And then there's that whole continuous improvement thing.
Right. Always getting better.
In a world that's always changing, you can't just sit back and relax, right? Got to be willing to adapt, learn from mistakes, always try to find a better way.
The only constant is change, right? That's what they say.
Yep, and JIT embraces that. Be comfortable with change, even seek it out. Use it to improve things.
Makes sense. So JIT is, it's not just about systems, processes, all that technical stuff.
Not just that, no. It's about people, too. Creating a culture where everyone feels like they can contribute, Share ideas, be a part of making things better.
It's a team effort.
It is, and that's where leadership comes in. To really make JIT work, you need leaders who can inspire people, build trust, be transparent, make sure everyone feels valued.
Sounds like a pretty tall order.
It is, but it's worth it. Because, at the end of the day, JIT isn't just about efficiency. It's about creating a better way of working, a better way of doing business, even a more fulfilling way of living, I'd say.
Wow, yeah. This has been really eye-opening. Learned a ton about JIT, but it feels like we've only just scratched the surface.
There's always more to learn, right?
Definitely. And I'm already looking at things differently, seeing where I can apply these principles in my own life.
That's the power of it. JIT, it's not just a bunch of tools or tricks. It's a way of thinking, a mindset that can help you be more efficient, more effective, more fulfilled in everything you do.
Well said. So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I really encourage everyone listening, take a minute to think about what you've learned.
Yeah.
How can you apply JIT to your own work, your projects, even your personal goals? What can you do to eliminate waste, streamline things, create that culture of continuous improvement in your own life?
Remember, the journey never really ends. We can always grow, learn, become better.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this awesome exploration of Just-in-Time.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep those minds curious and keep striving for excellence in everything you do. Hey, everybody. If you've ever wanted to sound like you just walked out of a classic American road trip movie,
Yeah.
then this deep dive is for you.
It is.
We're going to break down some of those essential road trip phrases and show you how there's so much more
Right.
than just about travel.
Yeah. You know, these phrases can really help you sound more natural in everyday English conversations.
You know that classic scene?
Yeah.
Someone yells road trip and everyone just like scrambles to get in the car.
Oh, I love that scene.
It's like pure movie magic, right?
Oh, totally.
But there's so much language packed into that moment.
Absolutely.
So let's unpack it, starting with that image of a packed car.
Oh, yeah.
It's more than just luggage, though, right?
It is.
It's like this whole vibe.
Yeah, it means you're prepped and ready for the journey.
Yes.
You got snacks, you got maps, you got everything you need.
Speaking of snacks,
Whoa.
what are your must-have road trip munchies?
Yes. Let us know in the comments.
Okay, yes, we got to get that snack list going.
We too.
But munchies is such a good word.
Oh, it's so perfect.
Because it just gives you that feeling.
It's the whole experience. You
Yeah.
know, it's snacking on the open road with your friends.
Yeah, and keeping the energy up.
Exactly.
Okay, before we hit the open road and dive into those munchies,
Okay.
we got to fill up the tank, right?
Of course we do.
I feel like there's more to that phrase, though.
You know what's so interesting about fill up the tank?
Yeah.
Is that it's not just about putting gas in your car.
Right.
You can use it in other situations, too.
Oh, really? Like how?
Imagine you're feeling totally drained after a long day.
Oh, yes.
You could say, I need to fill up my tank with some coffee and a good night's sleep.
Ooh, I like that.
It's like recharging your energy.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Okay, so we filled up the tank.
Yes.
We got our munchies.
Got 'em.
The car's packed.
We're ready
We're ready.
to hit the road.
What's next?
Pit stops.
Oh, yes, pit stops.
We gotta talk about pit stops.
But it's more than just bathroom breaks, right?
It is. Think about it.
Yeah. Pit stops, are these pauses in the journey? A chance to reflect and recharge.
That's a good point. I also feel like in movies,
Oh, yeah?
pit stops are always where something happens.
Absolutely. There are always these turning points
Yeah.
full of drama or comedy.
How many, like, tense scenes have we seen
So many.
at a station in a movie, right?
Oh, my gosh, all the time.
Or like a funny encounter with a quirky character
Oh, yeah, or like a weird
during a pit stop.
roadside diner.
Yes,
That's
it's
right.
a classic.
It is, and pit stop has become such a common phrase.
It has.
You know, it's not just about the road anymore.
It's not at all.
Like, I could totally say,
Mhm.
I need to make a pit stop at my desk for a coffee refill
Exactly.
during a busy workday.
You could.
I do.
Totally.
You know what? I actually have a really funny pit stop story.
Oh, tell me.
Picture this, okay?
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Middle of nowhere,
Oh, no.
miles between gas stations. And let's just say I learned the hard way
Oh, no.
about planning those pit stops.
I've been there.
But, okay, shifting gears a little bit.
Okay.
We've talked about being prepared for the road trip.
Yes.
There's got to be a phrase for that feeling of preparedness.
Oh, there absolutely is.
Like, what's that phrase that just makes you feel like,
You're ready for anything.
yes.
Like, you've got everything under control.
Yes, exactly.
We've got all our bases covered.
Yes.
It's the best feeling.
It is. It's like a sigh of relief.
Totally.
Like you've thought of everything you know,
Yeah.
from snacks to maps to, like, emergency supplies.
Even that perfect playlist,
Yes.
you gotta have the right music.
You do, and bases covered sounds so confident.
It does.
Like you really are ready for anything.
It's like you're saying, bring it on to
Yes.
the open road.
Okay, so explain bases covered a little more.
Okay, so it's like baseball, right?
Okay.
You have to protect each base to win the game.
Mhm.
Well, in a road trip, those bases are all the things that could go wrong.
Oh, I see.
Like flat tires, forgotten chargers, you know, all those little things.
Okay, so if you've got all your bases covered,
Yeah.
that means you've thought about all those things.
You're prepared for anything.
You're prepared. Okay, so you're about to head out on a road trip.
Right.
You got your bases covered.
Check.
What's that one phrase you just got to say?
Let's get going.
Yes.
It's the best.
There's just something about that phrase.
I know, it's so simple,
It's so simple.
but it captures that excitement
Yes.
of hitting the road and starting the adventure.
And it's not just for road trips either, right?
Oh, definitely not.
Like if you're about to start cooking,
Mm-hmm.
you could say,
Oh, yeah.
let's get cooking.
Absolutely.
Or if you're feeling uneasy somewhere, you could say,
Mhm.
let's get out of here.
It works in so many situations.
It does. It's so versatile,
It is.
but it's also all about context.
Oh, for sure.
Like you can say the same words,
Yeah.
but it can mean different things
Totally.
depending on how you say it.
Exactly. It shows how tone of voice is so important in English. You can say, let's get going
Yeah.
in a way that shows excitement or urgency or
Totally.
even a little bit of impatience.
Yeah, it all depends on your delivery.
It does. You know, it actually reminds me of this road trip
Oh, yeah.
I took with some friends after college.
It's okay.
We were young and carefree.
Yeah.
And we had the whole summer ahead of us.
Oh, that sounds like the ultimate let's get going moment.
It really was.
Did you have like a destination in mind?
We had a loose plan to end up on the West Coast,
Okay.
but we were mostly just driven by that desire
Yeah.
to see as much as we could.
Okay.
We just packed up this old station wagon,
Right.
grabbed a tent and some sleeping bags,
Yeah.
and hit the road.
Wow, that's the true road trip spirit right there.
It was.
I bet you have some amazing stories
Of tons.
from that trip.
Yeah, we met so many interesting people.
Oh, really? Like who?
Like small town diner owners
Oh,
with these
okay.
crazy stories,
Yeah.
and other travelers who would like join us
Mhm.
for parts of the journey.
I love that image of like those chance encounters
I know, it's the best.
on the open road,
Yeah.
sharing those experiences with people.
It's like those old stories of musicians hopping freight trains,
Right, exactly.
but a little more comfortable.
Slightly more comfortable, yeah.
Definitely.
Speaking of music,
Oh, yes.
what was your road trip playlist like?
Our playlist was legendary.
Oh, bet.
We had everything.
Like what?
Classic rock, folk, cheesy pop songs.
Yeah.
We belted them all out at the top of our lungs.
Oh, I can imagine the sing-alongs.
Oh, so many sing-alongs.
You know, there's just something about being on the road together
Oh.
that just breaks down barriers and you connect with people.
It's true, even if you've just met.
Yes, it's like
Yeah.
you're all part of this like
Yeah.
exclusive club of adventurers.
Totally.
You know?
United by the open road.
Yes, and that like thirst for discovery.
Exactly.
Did you make any like unexpected discoveries on your trip?
You know, one of my favorite things about that trip
Yeah.
was stumbling upon those hidden gems.
Oh, yeah. Like one day we were driving through Arizona.
Okay.
And we found this incredible canyon
Whoa.
that wasn't even on our map.
A secret canyon.
It was like a secret.
Say more.
It was magical. We hiked down
Yeah.
and we found this swimming hole fed by a waterfall.
That sounds amazing.
It was like something out of a movie.
Oh, that's like the perfect pit stop
It was the best pit stop ever.
in the best way possible.
It really was.
It's so funny how those unplanned detours
I-
often become the most memorable parts of a trip.
They do. It wasn't just about the destination. You know,
Ah.
it was about those unexpected adventures
Right.
along the way.
So true. It's those little surprises.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those unscripted moments
Yeah.
that make a road trip so special.
They really do.
You know, speaking of discoveries,
Okay.
did you know that the term road trip itself has a
Ah.
pretty interesting history?
Oh, I love a good word origin story.
So it turns out,
Okay.
road trip first popped up.
In the early 20th century,
Okay.
right when cars were becoming more popular.
Oh, that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, because as cars became more accessible,
Yeah.
people had more freedom to explore, to go beyond their usual boundaries.
And road trip perfectly captures
It does.
that spirit of adventure.
Yeah.
You know, that open-ended exploration.
It wasn't just getting from point A to point B.
Right.
It was about the journey itself.
Exactly. And it became this symbol
Yeah.
of freedom discovery, pursuing new experiences.
It's a powerful phrase.
It is. And that spirit is still alive today.
It is.
You know, even with
Yeah.
GPS
Mhm.
and smartphones,
Yeah.
there's something about hitting the open road that just feels timeless.
It's that feeling of leaving your worries behind,
Yes.
embracing the unknown,
Yes.
wind in your hair,
Yeah.
soundtrack of your life, blasting on the stereo.
It makes me want to like grab my camera and hit the road right now.
Me too.
You know,
It's the best.
I love taking photos and videos on road trips.
Oh, me too.
It's like creating your own
Yeah,
personal movie of the journey.
exactly. And then you can look back on them later
Yes.
and be transported right back to that moment.
It's the best. And speaking of taking things home from a trip,
Yes.
I'm a huge fan of collecting souvenirs.
Oh, me too.
You know, they're like these,
They're like little tangible reminders
Yes.
of the places you've been and the
Yeah.
people you've met.
and they're such great conversation starters.
They are.
You know, someone asks, where'd you get that?
Yeah,
And boom, you have a story
exactly.
about your amazing road trip adventure.
It's true. Souvenirs are a great way
They are.
to keep that road trip spirit alive
Yeah.
long after you've returned home.
They're a tangible reminder
They are.
that even though the trip might be over,
Mm-hmm.
those memories and experiences you gained
Yeah.
will stick with you.
They really will.
They really do stick with you. You know, all this talk about road trips and souvenirs,
Yeah.
it's got me thinking. These phrases we've been talking about,
Mhm.
they're kind of like souvenirs themselves.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah, tell me more.
Like a physical souvenir.
Okay.
It transports you back to a specific place.
Yeah.
These phrases can like evoke a feeling or memory
Right.
tied to an experience.
Yeah, like that road trip vibe.
Exactly.
It's not just about learning new words. It's
Yeah.
about connecting with a culture.
Yeah.
Understanding how people express themselves.
It's like picking up a piece of pottery
Yeah.
or a hand-woven tapestry on your travels.
Exactly.
These phrases, they become part of your own
Yes.
linguistic tapestry.
It's a beautiful way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
Adding color and texture.
It's like weaving together this rich tapestry of language,
I like that.
incorporating new threads and patterns
Yeah.
as we explore different cultures and experiences.
And the more you use these phrases,
Yeah.
the more natural they'll become.
It's like wearing a new piece of clothing.
Oh, yeah.
At first, it feels a bit stiff and unfamiliar,
Yeah.
but the more you wear it,
Mm.
the more comfortable you get.
It becomes a part of you.
Exactly.
So it's not just about memorizing words.
All right.
It's about making them your own.
Yeah, integrating them into your everyday speech.
Exactly. And the more you do that,
Mm.
the more confident you'll feel.
Absolutely.
Connecting with people from all walks of life.
That's the goal.
It is.
Yeah.
So to everyone out there learning English,
Yeah.
embrace that spirit of adventure.
Yes.
Don't be afraid to try out these new phrases.
Even if they feel a bit awkward at first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Every mistake is a chance to learn and grow.
That's right.
You might even discover some hidden linguistic gems along the way.
You never know what you'll find.
And most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes.
Language learning should be enjoyable.
It should be.
It shouldn't be a chore.
Not at all.
So let's get out there, explore the world of English,
Yes.
and see where it takes us.
Happy travels, everyone.
All right, buckle up, everybody. We're going on a road trip.
Oh, a road trip.
Not literally, no.
Oh, okay.
But we are taking a deep dive into all the essential English vocabulary and phrases you need to talk about road trips like a pro.
Sounds fun. I'm in.
Especially if you're, thinking about taking a cross-country adventure, or maybe just want to share some stories from your latest road trip and sound like you actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it makes sense. Being able to chat about road trips naturally is pretty important for anyone learning English, especially here in North America where road trips are like a national pastime.
Okay, so to really get into the nitty-gritty of road trip lingo, we've got some really cool source material that uses, get this, a dialogue
A dialogue.
between a couple who are getting ready to hit the road.
Clever.
It's like we're eavesdropping on their pre-trip chaos.
I like that pre-trip chaos who hasn't been there.
Seriously, and that's what makes it so relatable.
And such a good way to learn because you're hearing the phrases used in a real-world situation.
Yeah.
You pick up on the nuances, the little things that a dictionary definition might miss.
So they kick things off with the phrase road trip itself.
Ah, the classic road trip.
It seems simple enough, but think about all the images it conjures up. Freedom, wide open spaces, adventure.
It's not just driving from point A to point B, it's a whole experience.
And that's why understanding these phrases in context is key.
Absolutely.
Like if you were to just directly translate road trip into another language,
Right.
it wouldn't necessarily carry the same cultural weight.
The same vibe.
Right. Then we hear the car's packed,
Ah.
which is like the official starting pistol for any road trip.
You know, that feeling of accomplishment.
Mixed with a slight tinge of panic. Did I forget something?
Like your toothbrush or your passport.
Yeah,
It's a ritual. Packing the car.
transforming it from just a vehicle into your mobile home for the next however many days.
Everything you need crammed into that space.
And speaking of things you need, they mentioned packing munchies.
Oh, munchies. Essential road trip vocabulary.
I mean, is it even a road trip without snacks?
It's a deal breaker for me.
And munchies just highlights how important informal language is when you're talking about road trips.
Right. It's about being relaxed, comfortable, just having fun with your friends or family.
Before you even think about munchies, you got to fill up the tank.
Oh, yeah. Road trip 101.
Avoid running out of gas in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, especially if you're going somewhere remote.
It's not just practical advice, though,
It's also about being prepared.
which is a huge part of the road trip mindset.
Right. You're setting off on an adventure. You got to be ready for anything.
Speaking of being prepared, they use this phrase I love, we've got all our bases covered.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
It's like that feeling of, okay, snacks,
Check.
maps,
Check.
first aid kit,
Check, check, check.
playlist for every mood.
Disease.
You've thought of everything.
Confidence, self-reliance, that's the road trip spirit.
You're in control. You've got this. But then 10 minutes into the trip,
Uh-oh.
the wife's like, I need a pit stop.
Classic.
It's so funny because it's so true. No matter how well you plan,
Something always comes up.
life happens.
And pit stop, such a great phrase.
So versatile.
It's not just about refueling the car, it's about taking care of yourself on the journey.
Like a little reminder that it's okay to pause, take a break, go with the flow.
Even on a road trip.
It's a microcosm of the whole road trip philosophy, flexibility, spontaneity.
Those unplanned moments, they often lead to the best stories.
Totally. It's the detours, the unexpected stops, the little mishaps that make the trip memorable.
They add color.
And that's what makes this source material so engaging.
It is.
It's not just teaching us vocabulary. It's giving us a glimpse into the heart of what makes road trips special.
The culture, the humor, the shared experiences.
They make those journeys so memorable.
So the road trip continues in our source material.
Oh, yeah.
And so does our language journey.
Okay, where are we headed next?
We encounter the phrase, let's get going.
Oh, let's get going. Classic.
Seems pretty simple, right?
Yeah, you use it all the time.
But the dialogue actually shows us how versatile it can be.
Really?
It's not always about physically starting a journey.
Oh, interesting.
It can be about starting any kind of action.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me an example.
Like instead of saying, let's start cooking dinner,
Yeah.
you could say, let's get cooking.
Oh, I see. It adds a little more ooh.
Exactly, a sense of momentum.
Like you're ready to dive in.
Ready to get things done.
Okay, and the dialogue gives us even more ways to say, let's get going.
They use phrases like, let's get cracking.
Let's get down to business.
It's like a whole toolkit for expressing that ready, set, go feeling.
I love it.
And it shows how you can take a simple phrase
Yeah.
and personalize it.
Make it your own.
Exactly.
Now, there's another part of this source material that I found super helpful.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
The section they call Fluency Builder.
Ah, yes. Fluency Builder. Love it.
It's all about taking common phrases
Right.
and making them sound more sophisticated.
Like you're leveling up your English.
Exactly.
So instead of it's ready,
Which is fine.
you could say it's all set.
That does sound smoother, more natural.
We're like a native speaker.
I'm all about those little tweaks that can make a big difference.
It's about mastering the nuances of the language.
Expressing yourself with style.
Absolutely.
But this deep dive isn't just about vocabulary and grammar, right?
Right.
One of the things that really stood out to me was how they incorporated personal anecdotes about road trips.
Yes, the stories.
It makes it so much more engaging.
It brings the language to life.
You hear about families driving hours to go camping,
Groups of friends on these spontaneous adventures.
couples reconnecting on scenic routes.
Yeah, it's like they're saying, hey, we've all been there.
We get it.
We know the joys and the challenges of a road trip.
And it makes the vocabulary feel more real, relatable.
It also shows how universal road trips are,
Yeah, no matter where you come from.
or what language you speak.
There's something about hitting the open road that just appeals to us.
That sense of adventure and freedom,
Escaping the daily grind,
exploring new places.
making memories,
And those memories are often tied to the conversations we have along the way.
the stories we share.
The laughter, the sing-alongs.
Speaking of stories, there was this one anecdote that really stuck with me.
Oh, yeah. Which one?
It was about this group of friends driving to Las Vegas.
Vegas, baby.
And the whole story had this electric energy.
Like you could feel the excitement through the speakers.
Exactly.
And it was a nice contrast to that story about the family taking a more laid-back road trip through the countryside.
Right. Showing that there's no one right way to experience a road trip.
It's all about finding what suits you.
What reflects your personality.
Exactly.
And that's what makes this deep dive so great.
I agree.
It's not just giving you a list of phrases
It's giving you the tools
to express your own unique road trip experiences.
to share your stories, to connect with other travel enthusiasts.
And ultimately, to make those memories even more meaningful. This deep dive has been a blast.
It really has. We've covered so much ground.
From essential phrases to personal anecdotes.
We've really explored the language of road trips.
And those phrases, they're more than just words.
Right. They tap into a whole culture of adventure.
Freedom, self-reliance,
Like we've unlocked a secret code.
for understanding the spirit of road trips.
And now that you have that code,
It's time to use it.
think about the road trips you've taken.
Or the ones you dream of taking.
What phrases would you use to describe them?
Imagine telling a friend about that time you had to make an unexpected pit stop.
Because someone needed a milkshake.
Or recount a moment when you felt like you had all your bases covered.
Prepared for anything.
How would you capture that feeling of excitement when you set off on a new adventure?
Maybe with a, let's get going.
Or describe the camaraderie of a road trip with friends.
Using munchies and pit stops to paint a vivid picture.
Don't forget the power of personal stories
They bring the language to life.
and make your conversations more captivating.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Into the world of road trip English.
We want to leave you with a challenge.
Take these phrases
These insights.
and make them your own.
Weave them into your conversation.
Your stories.
Their memories.
Let them become part of your language journey.
Because language is about connection.
Sharing experience.
Expressing ourselves authentically.
Who knows? Maybe someday we'll cross paths on a real road trip.
And we can swap stories.
And travel tips.
All in fluent English.
Until then, happy travels.
And may your journeys be filled with adventure.
Laughter.
And unforgettable memories.
All right. Let's dive into one of those moments, awkward social situations. And specifically when you're trying to handle them in English.
Right.
So we've got some really good tips and phrases from an English learning expert on how to kind of just glide through these moments with a little more grace.
For sure.
And we're going to learn how to use things like in a bit of a hurry, contact details, and even that, so dreaded, slipped my mind.
These are the moments that can really throw you off when you're talking to someone. And no matter how good your English is,
right,
you worry about making mistakes, especially in a language you're learning.
Oh, absolutely. And the scenario that they use is one that I think we've all lived through.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Which is running into someone you've met before, and you want to be friendly and interested,
Right.
but their name has completely, poof, disappeared.
Totally blanked.
I mean, hasn't this happened to every single person on the planet?
You just draw a blank.
It's so awkward.
And that's exactly where the language and the social dynamics really come together.
Yes.
You have to know the right words,
Yes.
but also how to use them to really connect with that person and not make it worse.
Okay, so let's break down some of these phrases that they call lifesavers.
Okay.
First up, in a bit of a hurry.
Yeah.
And what I love about this one is how versatile it is. It's a really polite way to excuse yourself if you need to make like a quick getaway.
Right.
Or even just buy yourself a moment to kind of gather your thoughts.
Oh, yeah.
And hopefully that name will come back to you.
Exactly. And it also makes the other person feel like, okay, they're engaged, but they're busy.
Yeah.
It's totally acceptable to keep it short, and it
Yeah.
gives you a moment to maybe remember their name.
All right, so let's go on to contact details.
Okay.
Now, this is a super slick way to get their info. Again, without that. I've totally forgotten your name confession.
Right, exactly.
Just slip it in there.
It's so smooth. You just casually say something like, hey, it was great seeing you again. Do you have a card? Or let's connect on LinkedIn. What was your last name again?
Yes. And then there's that classic slipped my mind.
Oh, yeah. It never fails.
It's just the perfect idiom for those moments when you just can't remember something.
Right. You're acknowledging that you forgot, but in like a funny way.
Right.
It just lightens the mood.
Right. Like, hey, we all have those brain fart moments.
Exactly.
It happens.
It's okay.
And they shared this hilarious story
Oh, tell me about it.
about forgetting an uncle's name at a family reunion.
Oh, no.
It was so funny.
Oh, that's a classic.
I was dying laughing.
But, it really shows that even native speakers forget names sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of being human.
It happens to everyone.
Doesn't mean you're bad at English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So just to recap here, if you find yourself in that situation where someone's name has vanished into thin air,
Yeah.
don't panic. Just try one of these phrases in a bit of a hurry.
Right.
Contact details.
Mhm.
Or that classic, slip my mind.
Mhm.
And don't forget those nonverbal cues,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
like a genuine smile,
A nice smile goes a long way.
a little bit of eye contact.
Yes.
Things like that can go a long way, even when you can't remember what to say.
Absolutely. Even if the words aren't coming out right,
Yeah,
your body language can really help.
exactly.
So much of communication is nonverbal,
okay.
So don't underestimate it.
Absolutely. It's funny how those little brain blips
Yeah.
can happen even when you feel good about your English.
Totally.
You're feeling confident and then boom,
Right.
your brain just decides to go on vacation.
And it's those moments that really highlight that fluency is so much more than just memorizing words and grammar rules.
Right.
It's about navigating those real-life situations,
Yes, totally. And they had some other great tips in here too.
Yeah.
I love the suggestion of using those more casual greetings.
Oh, yeah.
Like instead of, how are you? How's it going?
Yeah.
Just feels more natural and approachable, right?
It does. It's a subtle shift, but it can really make a difference in how you come across.
Totally.
It shows that you're comfortable with the language and you're not afraid to be a little bit informal.
Right. And speaking of subtle cues,
Mm-hmm.
that tip about asking for a business card,
Oh, yeah.
brilliant.
Classic.
Like so smooth.
So smooth.
It's a way to get their name without having to admit you totally forgot it.
Exactly. A total win-win.
Right.
You get to see their name again and they feel good that you want to connect.
Right. And it's acceptable.
Yeah, it's professional.
Yes. Good.
So
Yeah.
no need to feel awkward.
So what are some other ways that we can handle that name-forgetting situation gracefully?
Well, one thing I like to do is kind of steer the conversation away from names altogether.
Okay.
Just ask open-ended questions, you know?
Yeah.
Show that you're genuinely interested.
Right.
Instead of getting hung up on, what's your name again? You can say something like, what have you been up to? Or how's that project going?
That's good.
You might even jog your memory naturally without having to actually ask their name.
Yeah, and even if you don't, you still had a positive interaction.
Exactly.
And if all else fails, honesty is always a good policy, right?
Oh, absolutely. Just admit it. I'm so sorry, but your name has totally slipped my mind.
Yeah.
Would you mind reminding me? Most people are totally understanding.
Right. It's just about acknowledging the awkwardness and not letting it derail everything.
Yeah. And a little humor can go a long way, too.
Oh, yeah.
Shows you don't take yourself too seriously.
People are drawn to that.
Exactly. Vulnerability is key.
I love this whole idea that fluency is really about connecting with people,
Mm-hmm.
not about speaking perfectly,
I couldn't agree more.
which is so reassuring.
It is. It's about getting your message across, building relationships,
Yeah.
engaging in real conversations.
Exactly. And sometimes those imperfections actually make us more relatable
Cool.
and even endearing.
They do. They make you human.
It's about embracing those moments instead of dreading them.
Well, for sure, those moments of vulnerability can lead to the strongest connections.
Okay, so beyond those specific phrases,
Yeah.
what are some other ways that we can boost our fluency?
Well, one of the best things you can do is just immerse yourself in the language.
Okay.
Surround yourself with English.
Like how?
Watch movies, listen to music, read books, follow English-speaking social media accounts.
Okay.
The more you hear and see the language, the more natural it will start to feel.
It's like creating your own little English world.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to make mistakes,
It's all part of it.
The more you practice, the better you'll get. And even native speakers make mistakes all the time.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
It's totally normal.
So that's reassuring.
It is.
What about accents?
That's a good question.
Do you think having an accent hinders fluency?
It's interesting because everyone has an accent.
Right.
It just reflects where you're from and your cultural influences.
Right. We tend to associate accents with non-native speakers, but really everyone speaks with an accent.
It's true. And embracing your accent can actually enhance your fluency.
Oh, interesting.
It adds a unique dimension to your communication
Yeah,
and shows your personal history.
I like that.
Think about it. Some of the most charismatic speakers have really distinctive accents.
That's true.
It becomes part of their charm.
Yes, totally. It's like their signature.
Exactly. And I think listeners really appreciate that authenticity. It shows you're comfortable with who you are.
Makes sense. So what if someone is feeling self-conscious about their accent?
Well, I think the most important thing is to focus on clarity.
Okay.
Rather than trying to eliminate your accent completely,
Right.
make sure people understand you. That's the key.
So true.
And there are some things that can help with clarity, like paying attention to your pronunciation,
Yeah.
especially sounds that might be different in your native language.
Okay.
Like the thuff sound. A lot of people struggle with that one.
Yes, that one's tricky.
It is, but practicing those sounds and focusing on clear articulation can really help.
Okay.
And also be aware of your pace and intonation. Sometimes speaking a bit slower can help people understand you.
Right. Especially if they're not used to your accent.
Exactly. It gives them time to process what you're saying.
And what about intonation?
Intonation is super important, too.
Okay.
Paying attention to the rise and fall of your voice,
Yeah.
emphasizing key words can really help convey your meaning.
Yeah, those are great tips.
Thanks.
It's an ongoing process, right?
It is. It's not about being perfect overnight.
Yeah.
It's about continuous improvement.
It's a journey.
It is.
And it's about embracing your unique voice.
Yeah.
Using it to communicate authentically.
Exactly.
Love that.
Your accent is part of what makes you you.
Okay, so we've talked about pronunciation and accents, but idioms and slang,
Oh, those can be tricky.
those can be really hard.
Right. They're like the secret codes of a language.
And they're always changing.
Exactly. They can vary by region, age group, even context.
That's just like a constantly evolving puzzle.
It is approach them with curiosity and humility.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to ask for help.
Like ask a native speaker.
Exactly. Most people are happy to explain, and they'll probably appreciate your interest.
Right. It's like having a language guide right there with you.
Exactly. The more you expose yourself to the language, the more comfortable you'll become.
Mm-hmm.
So watch movies, listen to music, talk to native speakers,
Okay.
and don't be afraid to try using those idioms and slang yourself.
Practice makes perfect.
Not perfect, but better. It's about communication and connection,
I love that.
not perfection.
It's a good reminder.
It is.
So this whole deep dive has really been about embracing those imperfections and using them to become more confident communicators.
Absolutely. Language is a tool for connection, not judgment.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
It's about building bridges, not walls.
I love that. And when we focus on connection rather than perfection,
Yeah.
I think it creates a more welcoming and inclusive space.
It does. It's about celebrating our diversity,
Mhm.
appreciating all those unique perspectives.
Yeah.
And that includes our accents, our backgrounds, even our mistakes.
Our imperfections are part of what make us human.
They do. They make us relatable.
So what does fluency mean to you?
Ooh, good question. For me, fluency isn't about speaking perfectly.
Yeah.
It's about communicating authentically, being able to express myself and connect with others.
Regardless of those imperfections.
Exactly. It's about the heart of communication.
I like that.
It's not just the mechanics of the language.
So true. And it's a journey, right?
It is. It's an ongoing journey.
Always more to learn,
Always.
which can be exciting,
It is. It's an adventure.
filled with new discoveries and connection.
Exactly. And the most important thing is to enjoy the ride.
I love that. So let's raise a glass to the beauty and power of language
Cheers to that.
and to the joy of connecting with others no matter how fluently we speak. And to all those awkward moments
Yeah.
and imperfect pronunciations along the way.
They make the journey memorable.
They do. All right. Before we wrap up this deep dive,
Oh.
I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
I like it.
We've talked about navigating those awkward social situations,
Mm.
but I think the most important thing to remember is that everyone feels awkward sometimes.
Oh, for sure.
It's just a universal human
Yeah.
experience.
It is. It's part of being human.
And the key is to embrace it.
Yes.
Laugh at ourselves a little bit and use it as a chance to connect with others.
Turn those cringeworthy moments into something positive.
Right.
Moments of shared humanity.
I love that. So next time you're feeling awkward
Yeah.
or self-conscious, just remember you're not alone.
We've all been there.
We've all been there and we've all survived.
And who knows, maybe that awkward moment will turn into a funny story.
Or a new friendship.
Exactly.
So remember, the beauty of language isn't about speaking perfectly.
Nope.
It's about connecting authentically and embracing the imperfections that make us human.
Beautifully said.
This has been such a great conversation.
Me too.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for handling those tricky social situations.
I agree. It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
Wow. I feel like we've really uncovered some valuable stuff here. And this isn't just for English learners. This is for anyone who wants to, feel better in those social situations.
Totally. I think we all want to connect with people, and language is such a powerful tool to do that.
And what I really like is that it's not about perfection.
Oh,
It's about being yourself.
absolutely. Embrace who you are.
Right.
Accents and all.
Yeah. Use your unique voice.
Yeah, let it shine.
So refreshing.
Yeah,
Okay. So we've covered so much ground here.
we have.
But before we wrap up,
Okay.
I want to leave our listeners with a little challenge.
Ooh, I like challenges.
We've talked about specific phrases,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering how we can apply these ideas of confidence and authenticity to other social situations.
That's a great question. I think it starts with changing our mindset.
Okay.
Instead of feeling scared or nervous,
Right.
what if we approach those interactions with curiosity?
Oh, I like that.
A genuine desire to connect and learn.
It's like turning those awkward moments into opportunity
Exactly.
for growth.
And remember, everyone feels awkward sometimes.
Yeah, we've said that.
It's part of being human.
So instead of avoiding it,
Mm-hmm.
what if we embrace those moments
Yeah.
as chances to connect,
Find that common ground.
that shared humanity?
I love that.
Yeah, it's a powerful message.
It is. And it goes beyond language.
Yeah, it's a human thing.
We're all in this together.
So to our listeners out there,
Mm-hmm.
embrace the journey of learning English
Yeah.
and life itself with all its ups and downs.
For sure.
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Laugh at yourself and connect with others.
Be authentic.
Yourself.
You don't have to be fluent to be a great communicator.
I love that.
Just be open to learning.
And enjoy the ride.
Enjoy it.
This has been such an inspiring conversation.
It has.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into embarrassing encounters and English fluency.
It's been a pleasure.
We'll catch you next time for another fascinating exploration of language culture and the human experience. Hey everyone, ready to dive in? We've got some pretty cool material to unpack today, and it's all about learning English.
Yeah.
But it's got a bit of a twist to it. I think you can like this one. One of the things that really stood out to me was how much it emphasizes having fun. It's not just about, memorizing verbs or anything like that. It's about finding ways to actually enjoy the process of learning. Another thing I thought was really cool was this whole idea of like routine and how powerful that can be, not just for language learning, but for life in general. So we've got two big things to explore: making English learning fun and building a solid routine. Sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So one of the things that grabbed my attention right away was this quote. If you don't have fun, it is harder to learn English. I mean, it sounds so simple, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we often forget. When we get bogged down with, all the grammar rules and all the vocabulary and all this stuff, we forget that it actually can be fun. And I think what's cool about this material is that it doesn't just tell you to have fun. It gives you some concrete ideas.
Right.
Like, for example, if you're a sports fanatic, it suggests reading about your favorite teams in English. Or like, if fashion is your thing, go on YouTube and explore all the amazing English language fashion channels. I mean, possibilities are pretty much endless, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm curious, like, what about you? What are you passionate about? And how could you weave that into your English practice?
That's a great question. I think what's really fascinating here is like the psychology behind all of this. When you connect learning to something you genuinely enjoy, you tap into something called intrinsic motivation. It's like the secret weapon that can make you a way better learner.
Intrinsic motivation. Let's hear the sound of that. Can you break that down for us a little bit?
Yeah, totally. So basically, intrinsic motivation is the difference between doing something because you have to versus doing something because you actually want to. So when you're intrinsically motivated, you're not driven by, external rewards or pressures. You're driven by a genuine interest and enjoyment in the activity itself.
I see.
And the really cool thing is that when you experience positive emotions while you're learning, it actually enhances memory and retention. So having fun isn't just about making the learning process more enjoyable, it's actually making it more effective too.
Yeah, that's awesome. So it's like when you get totally engrossed in a good book or, like a captivating movie, you just remember the details so much better because you're really, truly engaged.
Exactly. Like if you're someone who's passionate about history, listening to podcasts in English about historical events, that could be a really cool way to learn. Or if you have a hobby, try joining some online communities where English is the main language. It's like opening up this whole world of learning and connecting with other people.
Yeah, I love that idea. It's like finding your tribe, people who share your interests.
Yeah.
And you can learn and grow together.
Exactly.
So, okay, we're on board with the fun factor. But what about this whole idea of routine? The material talks a lot about building a daily routine, waking up early, setting aside time for language study, even scheduling in meals and exercise.
Wow, that's
and here's where it gets really interesting. It stresses the importance of consistency, like to the extreme. It even mentions like waking up and going to bed at the same time every day, even on weekends. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I could handle that level of
rigid and yeah, I hear you. I mean, I definitely see the value in having a routine, but maybe not to that extreme. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it goes way beyond just learning English, Routine can have a huge impact on your productivity, your well-being, like your whole life.
So we're talking about like leveling up your life in general.
Exactly. Think about it. Routines streamline your day. They reduce that decision fatigue by automating certain aspects of your life.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You wake up, you know what to expect. You have a plan. It creates structure, predictability, a sense of control, which honestly can significantly reduce stress.
Oh, for sure.
And when you're less stressed, you have more mental energy to focus on the things that matter, like mastering English.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light here. So it's not about being like a robot, It's about creating a framework that frees up your mind to focus on the things you actually enjoy.
Exactly.
I like that. But isn't there a danger of becoming like too rigid?
Then we wrote
That's spontaneity. What about flexibility?
Yeah, that's a great point. You definitely don't want to become a slave to your routine. It's all about finding that balance. Having structure is great, but you also need the flexibility to adapt to unexpected situations or just, shake things up every once in a while.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like the takeaway here is find that sweet spot between structure and flexibility. Have a plan, but don't be afraid to deviate from it when you need to.
Yeah.
But let's zoom in a little bit here. We've been talking a lot about the big picture benefits of routine, the big picture benefits of enjoyment. But what does that actually look like in practice? Like, what are some specific things that this material recommends for actually, learning English? One thing I notice is It really dives into different areas like reading, watching videos. And it's not just about passively consuming the content. It's about actively engaging with it. There's even a section on, you know, finding language partners, joining online communities.
Yeah, and what I find so effective about those suggestions is that it's all about weaving English practice into your everyday life. It's not about adding all these extra tasks to your to-do list. It's about finding those natural entry points to immerse yourself in the language.
Oh, that's a good point. That reminds me of something else that really stood out to me. The part about reading, but not just like any reading. It emphasizes finding material that you're genuinely interested in, whether it's sports, science fiction, biographies, whatever sparks your curiosity. Because when you're hooked on the content, the language learning almost becomes like a side effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And the same goes for video content. There's a whole section on using YouTube as a learning tool. I mean, think about it. There are YouTube channels on literally any topic you can imagine. Cooking, travel, history, all in English. It's like having access to this global library of knowledge, and it's all just a click away.
And it's not just about watching either.
Yeah.
It encourages you to actually interact with the content, like leaving comments, joining discussions, even creating your own videos in English. It's about taking that passive consumption and turning it into an active learning experience.
Exactly. And speaking of active learning, there's a whole section on finding language partners and joining online communities. It really emphasizes that importance of interacting with real people.
Yeah. And it even suggests checking out websites like meetup.com or looking for language exchange groups in your city.
Oh, that's a great idea.
That's like having a built-in support system of people who are on the same journey as you.
Yeah, exactly. It takes the learning process from this like solitary endeavor to a more collaborative one.
Right.
You can practice speaking, get feedback on your pronunciation, and learn from each other's mistakes.
And beyond the practical benefits, I think there's something really motivating about knowing that you're not alone in this, that there are other people out there who understand the challenges and can celebrate the victories with you.
For sure.
You know what else I thought was really insightful? The part about Parmenal. Embracing those moments of imperfection.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it acknowledges that. You're going to make mistakes, especially when you're first starting out.
Definitely.
But instead of seeing those mistakes as failures, it encourages you to view them as opportunities for growth.
Yeah, I like that.
It's like shifting your perspective from a fear of making mistakes to a sense of curiosity and playfulness.
Exactly.
It's like giving yourself permission to stumble, knowing that each stumble is actually bringing you closer to fluency.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the messiness of the learning process.
For sure.
And, you know, the more you embrace those stumbles, the faster you'll progress.
Totally.
It reminds me of something I read recently about the power of a growth mindset. You know, that belief that your abilities aren't fixed, but they can be developed through effort and learning.
Oh, absolutely. Having a growth mindset is essential for language learning. It's about seeing challenges as opportunities for growth and believing that you can constantly improve with dedication and the right strategies.
Right. And I think it ties in so beautifully with all the themes that we've been talking about today.
Yeah.
You know, making the learning process enjoyable, integrating it into your life, embracing that consistent routine. When you combine all of those elements with a growth mindset, you're creating this really powerful formula for success.
Yeah, for sure.
So as you embark on your English language learning adventure, remember to savor the journey. Find those moments of joy, those sparks of curiosity, and celebrate each milestone along the way.
As you navigate those inevitable challenges, remember to be kind to yourself. Embrace those mistakes as stepping stones. And trust that with consistency and the right approach, you can achieve your language goals.
And remember, this is your journey. It's about finding what works for you, what motivates you, what keeps you engaged. So what stands out to you from all of this? What's inspiring you to take action?
I think one of the most valuable takeaways for me is the emphasis on personalization. You know, there's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning. What works for one person might not work for another. So it's really about finding what resonates with you, what sparks your passion, what fits into your life.
So it's about becoming like
Yeah.
the architect of your own language learning journey.
Exactly.
You know, figuring out what you want to achieve, what you enjoy doing, and then designing a plan that receives all of those unique elements.
Yeah, for sure.
And that might involve some experimentation too, right?
Oh, definitely.
You know, try different methods, explore different resources, see what clicks. Don't be afraid to adjust your approach as you go along.
Totally.
And speaking of approaches, let's circle back to that. detailed daily routine we were talking about earlier, the one with the super strict wake up and bedtimes, while I admire the dedication, I'm not sure that level of rigidity is realistic for everyone.
Yeah, I agree. It's really about finding what works for you. But I think there are definitely some elements that we can borrow, like the idea of waking up a little bit earlier to study while your mind is fresh, or dedicating specific blocks of time to different activities like reading, listening, or conversation practice.
Okay, so maybe not the exact same schedule every single day, but the principle of having a structure, of carving out that dedicated time for language learning.
Right. And remember, it doesn't have to be huge chunks of time. Even 15 or 20 minutes here and there can make a difference, especially if you're consistent.
Oh, for sure. And I love that idea of incorporating English learning into activities you're already doing, like listening to podcasts while you commute, or watching English language news during breakfast.
Exactly. It's about finding those small, consistent ways to weave the language into the fabric of your day.
It's like sneaking in a workout. While you're doing everyday chores,
Right.
it just becomes a natural part of your routine.
And the beauty of it is that these small, consistent efforts really add up over time. It's like the principle of compound interest, but for language learning.
I like that. Compound interest for language learning.
Yeah.
So as you go forth and craft your own English learning routine, remember to be playful, be curious, and most importantly, be consistent.
Yeah, and don't be shy about reaching out and sharing your experiences with us. We're always eager to hear your stories, your tips, your triumphs.
Absolutely. We're all on this journey together. Until next time, happy learning.
That's a great point. You don't want to become a slave to your routine. You need that. Structure's great, but you need flexibility to adapt when things come up or just shake things up.
Right. So find that sweet spot between the structure and the flexibility. Have a plan. But don't be afraid to deviate. But
let's zoom in a little bit. We've been talking a lot about routine, enjoyment, the benefits. But what does this actually look like in practice? What are some specific things that we can do to actually learn English? What does this material recommend?
Well, one thing I noticed is it dives into different areas, like reading, watching videos.
Right.
And it's not just about passively consuming that content. It's about actively engaging with it. There's even a section on finding language partners, joining online communities.
Yeah. What I find so effective about that, those suggestions, it's about weaving that English practice into your everyday life. It's not about adding a bunch of extra tasks to your to-do list. It's about finding those natural entry points to immerse yourself.
Right. That reminds me. There's a part in here about reading.
Yeah.
But not just any reading. It's about finding material that you're genuinely interested in, whether it's sports, science fiction, biographies, whatever it is, that sparks your curiosity. Because when you're hooked on the content, the language learning almost becomes like a side effect.
And the same goes for video content. There's this whole section on using YouTube as a learning tool. I mean, there are channels on literally any topic you can imagine. Cooking, travel, history, all in English. It's like having access to this global library of knowledge at your fingertips.
And it's not just about watching either. It's about interacting, leaving comments, joining discussions, even creating your own videos.
Right.
So you're taking that passive consumption.
And making it active.
Exactly. And speaking of active learning, there's a whole section on finding language partners, joining online communities. So important to interact with real people.
Yeah. It even suggests websites like meetup.com, language exchange groups in your city.
Yeah.
So you have this built-in support system of people who are on the same journey.
Exactly. And it takes it from that solitary endeavor to something that's more collaborative.
Right.
You know, you can practice speaking, get feedback on your pronunciation, learn from each other's mistakes.
Beyond the practical benefits, there's just something so motivating about knowing that. You're not alone.
Oh, for sure.
There are other people who understand the challenges, who can celebrate the victories.
Totally.
You know what else I thought was interesting? The part about embracing those moments of imperfection.
Oh, yeah.
Like, it acknowledges that you're going to make mistakes. Of course.
Especially when you're first starting out.
Right.
But instead of seeing those mistakes as failures,
it
encourages you to see them as opportunities to grow.
Yeah, I love that.
Like you're shifting your perspective from fear to curiosity, playfulness.
Exactly.
You're giving yourself permission to stumble, knowing that each stumble is bringing you closer. You're embracing the messiness of the process.
The more you do that,
right,
the faster you'll progress.
Right. Reminds me of that growth mindset. You know, that idea that your abilities aren't fixed. They can be developed through effort.
Yeah. A growth mindset
Yeah.
is essential for language learning. It's about seeing challenges as
Opportunities.
to grow and believing that you can constantly improve.
Right. And it just ties in so well with all the themes we've been discussing and making it enjoyable, integrating it into your life, being consistent, having that routine, combining those elements with a growth mindset creates such a powerful formula. So, as you embark on this journey, remember to savor it. Find those moments of joy, those sparks of curiosity, celebrate those milestones.
And as you navigate those inevitable challenges, be kind to yourself, embrace those mistakes as stepping stones, and just trust that with consistency and the right approach, you can achieve those goals.
And remember, this is your journey. Find what works for you, what motivates you, what keeps you engaged.
So what stands out to you from all of this? What's inspiring you to take action?
Well, honestly, it's just that reminder that language learning doesn't have to be this rigid textbook-driven chore. It can be something that you weave into the things you're already doing, the things that you love. But I think the question is, how do we actually make that happen? How do we take all this amazing advice and turn it into a concrete plan?
Yeah, that's the key, isn't it? I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is that emphasis on personalization. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning. What works for one person might not work for another. So it's really about finding what resonates with you. What are you passionate about? What fits into your life?
So you're becoming like the architect
Yeah.
of your own language learning journey.
Exactly.
You're figuring out what you want to achieve, what you enjoy, and then designing a plan around that.
Yeah, and that might involve some experimentation.
Oh, for sure.
You know, try different things, explore different resources, see what clicks for you.
Don't be afraid to adjust your approach as you go along.
Absolutely.
And speaking of approaches, let's circle back to that daily routine we were talking about. The super strict wake up and dead times. I mean, I admire the dedication, but I'm not sure. That level of rigidity is realistic for everyone.
I agree. I think it's about finding what works for you, but there are definitely some elements that we can borrow, like the idea of waking up a little bit earlier to study while your mind is fresh.
Or dedicating specific blocks of time to different activities like reading, listening, conversation practice. So maybe not the exact same schedule every single day. But the principle of having a structure, carving out that time.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be huge chunks of time either. Even 15 or 20 minutes here and there can make a big difference, especially if you're consistent.
Right. And I love that idea of weaving it into things you're already doing, like listening to podcasts while you're commuting or watching English language news.
While you're having breakfast.
Absolutely. Just find those little ways to make it a part of your day.
Yeah. Like sneaking in a workout while you're doing chores. It just becomes a natural part of your routine.
And the amazing thing is, those small efforts, they really add up over time. It's like compound interest, but for language learning.
Oh, I love that. Compound interest for language learning. So as we wrap up here, any final words of wisdom?
You know, just remember to be playful, be curious, and most importantly, be consistent.
Yeah. And don't be shy about sharing your journey with us.
Oh, yeah.
We're always eager to hear your stories, your tips, your triumphs.
All that son. Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time we're looking into how you can learn English using podcasts.
Yeah, you know they're so accessible.
Right. And they're super convenient, too. You can just pop in your earbuds and soak up authentic spoken English whenever you want, wherever you are.
It's amazing.
I was looking through the stuff we have for this deep dive, and it's actually pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like how some of these podcasts even bring up, like, cultural differences. In how people use banks, even. Like, in some places, people hardly ever use checks these days.
Yeah, that's so true. Like, over here, I think I've written one check in the past 5 years. It's wild.
It is. It's almost like a little extra lesson on how the world works.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Because really, language and culture, they go hand in hand, you know? You're not just learning words.
Right.
You're getting a feel for how people think in different places. That's what I think is so cool about this kind of learning.
Okay, so let's jump into the episode we're looking at today for this deep dive. It starts off like a mini lesson, almost.
Yeah.
You know, just a quick vocab preview. And two of the terms they jump into right away are checking account and savings account.
Okay.
Now, a checking account, it's like your everyday money hub.
Okay.
For like paying bills, grabbing groceries, quick transactions, easy access. Now, a savings account, that's where you park your money.
Right.
Hopefully it grows a bit with interest. It's more
Right.
long-term.
Yeah, I think the episode does a really good job of kind of putting those two side by side,
Yeah.
so it's easier to get the difference. It's like those memory tricks, where you connect ideas together.
Oh,
It just sticks better.
yeah. And speaking of things that stick, you know what else is great for that? Humor.
Of course.
And this podcast actually uses it pretty well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like there's this part where a customer is trying to deposit $1 billion. I mean, come on.
You've got to love that.
It's great.
Humor is so important when you're learning a language.
Oh, for sure.
Because when you laugh, your brain remembers what you just heard. And it takes the dryness out of, like, learning grammar and vocab. It just makes it more fun.
Totally agree. Yeah, I'm always trying to come up with those silly mnemonics
Yeah.
or funny examples when I'm learning something new.
That's the way to do it.
Okay, are you ready for the main event?
Let's do it.
The episode's got this dialogue like you're right there in the bank, Let's hear a bit of it.
Okay.
I really like how they're using language that feels more conversational.
Uh-huh.
Not like what you'd see in a textbook. It's like how people actually talk,
Totally.
more natural.
Yeah, for example, like the customer says, will you require overdraft protection?
Right.
Instead of something more stiff and formal, It's a small difference.
Oh, I see, yeah.
But it shows how casual everyday speech can be. And those little things, they make a difference.
They do. And it's those kinds of things that make podcasts such a great way to learn English. You're not just like memorizing words from a list. You're seeing how they fit into real conversations.
Exactly. And I mean, speaking of real conversations, after the dialogue in this podcast, it goes into the section they call language takeaway.
Okay.
And they break down 4 key financial terms.
Okay, which ones?
Transaction, balance, overdraft, and debit card.
Great. So let's take those one at a time.
Sure.
First up, transaction.
Yeah.
What exactly does that mean in this context?
Basically, it's any action where money's moving in or out of your account. It's broad. Deposits, withdrawals, purchases, even transfers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like the podcast, they use phrases like, I need to see my recent bank transactions,
Right.
or there's no fee for doing bank transactions online.
So basically, anytime money changes hands, whether it's you handing over cash or, doing something online,
Exactly.
it all counts. Okay. Next up is balance.
Right. So your balance is how much money you have available at any given time.
Okay. And the podcast throws in some humor here.
Oh, how so?
Well, they say something like, my account balance is $2 right now.
Oof. Been there.
Right. It's a little reminder to, like, check your balance often.
Yeah, a universal experience for sure. All right. Overdraft. This one can be a little tricky sometimes.
Yeah, it can be. So an overdraft happens when you spend more than you actually have in your account,
Right.
and then your balance goes negative. The podcast gives this example. Let's say you have $500 in your account,
Okay.
and you spend $600. Boom.
Ouch.
$100 overdraft. Sometimes they call it the negative balance, too.
Okay. And they have some examples in the podcast, right?
Oh, yeah. Like, the max overdraft on my account is only $55,000.
Okay.
Or, I'm so sorry, sir, but you've spent more than your overdraft limit allows.
Good reminder to be careful about our spending habits, for sure.
Absolutely.
All right, last but not least, debit card. So a debit card is issued by your bank and lets you use the money directly from your checking account.
Right.
The podcast actually spends a little bit of time explaining how it's different from a credit card, which is super important for understanding how both cards work.
Yeah.
And for being smart with your finances, making sure you know where the money you're spending is actually coming from.
Totally. Spending your own money versus borrowing it, two very different things.
Exactly. And this podcast does a nice job breaking that down.
I like this next part, the Fluency Builder segment. They focus on polite ways to ask someone to do something,
Oh, cool.
like analyzing phrases the bank teller uses, things like, I'll get you to,
Oh, interesting.
or if you could just.
I like that. I mean, those are good examples because, well, they're not demanding at all.
Yeah, they're very polite.
Yeah, I'll get you too. It's like a way of indirectly asking someone to do something.
Yeah.
So instead of saying, please fill out this paperwork, it sounds more like you're offering to help.
Yeah, it's much gentler.
It is. And then if you could just, it makes it a suggestion
Yeah.
instead of like an order. So instead of sign here, it's if you could just sign here. More respectful,
Yeah, I see.
It gives the person some space to make their own choice.
Fascinating how just changing the way you phrase something can make such a difference.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I want to bring up something that really stood out to me in this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Their little talk about checks.
Mm-hmm.
You know how in different parts of the world, people use checks differently. Like in some countries, they're still really common,
Right.
and then others have gone almost totally digital. Like you said, you rarely use them.
It's true. And that's a perfect example of how, like, even a simple thing like paying with a check, it can show you a lot about cultural differences.
For sure.
Like some countries, people still get paid with checks every month. They call it a paycheck.
Right.
But in some places, checks are like almost extinct. Think about China. Everyone's using their phones to pay for everything.
It's wild.
It is. The podcast encourages people to think about their own experience with banking, like how are things done in your country? It just adds another layer of understanding, not just about the language, but also about the culture behind it.
It's like a little cultural exchange happening right in your ears.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It reinforces the idea that language learning, it goes way beyond just memorizing words.
Yeah.
It's about opening your mind to how people from different places live and think and connect with each other. As we go a bit deeper into this episode, it really hits me how important it is to really listen when you're learning a language.
Yeah.
It's not just hearing the words. It's more like engaging with them,
Uh-huh.
like trying to figure them out, picking out what they mean.
Kind of like being a language detective.
Exactly.
And this podcast, with its focus on like real-life dialogue,
Yeah.
gives you the perfect material to practice those detective skills.
Oh, absolutely. Remember that bank dialogue we were talking about?
Yeah.
So many little clues in there that you might miss if you're not paying close attention.
Like what kind of clues?
Well, even something as basic as a greeting can tell you a lot about how people communicate. For example, the customer's first line is, "Hello. Yes, I'd like to open a bank account."
Oh, okay.
See that little yes tucked in there after hello?
I actually hadn't thought about it that way, but yeah, it does make it sound more polite.
Exactly. It's like they're acknowledging the other person, showing they're ready to talk.
It's like those unwritten rules of conversation that you don't always think about.
Totally. Those subtle things that make a language come alive. And podcasts, with their emphasis on natural spoken English, they're a great way to pick up on that stuff.
Yeah, I can see how that would be really helpful for learners who want to sound more like comfortable and fluent when they speak.
For sure. And another thing that jumped out at me from the dialogue was how the bank teller used certain phrases to guide the conversation.
Yeah.
Making it flow smoothly.
Right?
Things like, "Certainly I can help you with that. And what features do they offer?"
It's almost like they're conducting the conversation.
Exactly. Like an orchestra, keeping everything moving along smoothly. That's definitely a skill worth paying attention to, especially if you're trying to get better at having conversations in English.
Like a master class in smooth talking.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question. We've been talking a lot about the practical stuff like vocab and grammar, but what about the emotional side of things?
Uh-huh.
How can podcasts help learners build confidence and fluency when it comes to actually speaking the language?
That's a great question. I think podcasts can really boost your confidence because they're such a safe space to practice.
Okay.
It's not like talking to someone face to face. You don't have that pressure to be perfect.
Right.
With podcasts, you can listen and repeat, practice as much as you want. No one's judging you.
Like having your own personal English coach, anytime, anywhere.
Exactly. You can rewind, replay sections you didn't quite catch. And as you get more comfortable with the sounds of the language, your confidence will grow. Plus, you'll be exposed to all sorts of different accents and ways of speaking.
That's true. So you get used to hearing the language in different forms.
Exactly. Makes you a more flexible communicator. And we can't forget about stories.
Oh, right.
A lot of podcasts, especially the ones made for language learners, use stories to teach.
Oh, interesting.
And stories, well, they make learning more fun, but they also give you context. You can see how words and phrases are actually used in different situations.
It's like you're absorbing the language naturally.
Exactly. And when you connect with the characters in the plot, you're more motivated to understand and speak the language.
It's not just about memorizing words anymore. It's about experiencing them.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about something else podcasts are great for, cultural sensitivity.
Oh, that's a good one. We talked about how this episode touches on cultural differences when they talk about checks.
Right. But podcasts in general can really help you become more aware of different cultures.
Okay, how so?
Well, they're like a window into other people's lives. You get to hear their stories, their opinions firsthand. You learn about how they think, how they communicate, how they interact with each other.
Like having a virtual passport to different parts of the world.
Exactly. You'll be exposed to different norms, values, and beliefs.
Right.
Maybe some of them will be different from your own.
Yeah.
And that's what helps you build empathy and a deeper understanding of the world around you.
Like a crash course in how to communicate across cultures.
Exactly. And that's becoming more and more important, in our globalized world. It's not just about speaking the language fluently, it's about being able to connect with people from different backgrounds, understanding and respecting their differences.
Building bridges.
Exactly. And podcasts are a powerful tool for doing just that. Earlier we talked about humor and how it can be a really good way to learn a language.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm curious, though, how do you think podcasts can use humor effectively?
That's a good question. It can be tough to get it right, especially across different cultures.
It is. It's a delicate balance.
Yeah,
But when it's done well, humor can make a big difference.
for sure.
Podcasts can use humor in so many ways,
Right?
like witty banter between the hosts or clever storylines.
It's like adding a little spice to the mix.
Exactly. And the great thing about podcasts is that you get to hear humor in its natural form.
Yeah.
Like part of spontaneous conversations and storytelling.
Right.
And that really helps you understand the nuances of the language and the culture.
It's like you're getting a glimpse into what people find funny in a particular culture.
That's it. And that kind of understanding, it can be so valuable.
Oh, yeah.
It helps you connect with native speakers on a deeper level. You'll feel more confident navigating those social situations.
It's like a secret weapon for breaking the ice and building relationships.
Absolutely. And podcasts, they're full of humor,
Yeah.
stand-up comedy, satirical news shows, funny interviews.
So much to choose from.
There's something for everyone, no matter what you find funny or what your level of English is.
So we've talked a lot about the good stuff about using podcasts for language learning. But what about the challenges? What kind of hurdles might people run into?
Yeah, that's a good point. While podcasts are amazing, they do come with their own set of challenges.
Okay, like what?
Well, one of the biggest ones is the sheer variety of accents and speaking styles you'll come across.
Yeah, true.
And the vocabulary can be quite diverse, too. It can feel a bit overwhelming, especially if you're just starting out.
Like being thrown into a noisy market with different dialects swirling around you.
That's a great way to put it. And podcasts, well, they're often unscripted and spontaneous,
Right.
meaning the language is a lot more casual and fast-paced than what you might be used to from textbooks or language courses.
It's like trying to crack a code where the rules keep changing.
Exactly. That can be frustrating, especially if you prefer a more structured approach to learning.
So getting used to the speed and the different ways people speak, that's a key challenge.
It is. But it's also an incredible opportunity for growth.
Oh, okay.
You see, when you grapple with these linguistic complexities, you gain a deeper understanding of the nuances of the language.
Right.
And you become more adept at adapting to different communication styles. It's like a mental workout for your language skills.
I like that analogy.
And that agility, that's crucial for communicating in the real world, where language rarely follows the neat rules of a textbook.
Yeah, that's true.
Podcasts, with their mix of content and speaking styles, they provide the perfect training ground for developing that agility.
Now, another challenge I can think of is the lack of visuals.
Mm-hmm.
With podcasts, it's all about the audio.
Right.
Unlike face-to-face conversations or videos, you don't have those visual cues to help you understand what's going on.
That's a good point. Those visual cues can be really helpful.
Yeah, they help you understand emotions, intentions, the whole context of the conversation. Without them, it can be tricky to pick up on nuances, especially things like humor or sarcasm.
You're right. It's like watching a movie with the screen turned off.
Exactly.
You have to rely solely on what you hear to figure out what's happening. And for learners who are more visual, who learn better by seeing things, that can be a real obstacle.
So knowing your learning style and finding podcasts that fit that style is important.
Absolutely. Some podcasts use more descriptive language or tell stories to make up for the lack of visuals. Others might focus on speaking clearly and slowly to make the content easier to follow.
It's about finding what works best for you.
Exactly. The great thing is there are so many podcasts out there.
There is
There's something for everyone.
so many options.
No matter how you learn best, what you're interested in, or your level of English.
It's like a whole world of language learning right at your fingertips.
It is. But all those options can also make it hard to choose.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You might feel overwhelmed trying to find the right podcasts for you.
Like standing in a huge bookstore, surrounded by books, but not knowing where to start.
Exactly. That's where getting some guidance can really help. Talk to your English teacher, fellow learners, or look online for communities focused on language learning. They can give you great recommendations on which podcasts are most effective.
Like having a personal guide to help you navigate the world of podcasts.
Exactly. That kind of support can make a huge difference in keeping you motivated and on track with your language goals. We've talked a lot about listening comprehension, but what about actually speaking?
Yeah, that's a good point.
How can podcasts help learners become more fluent and confident in their own speaking?
That is a good question. I mean, podcasts are primarily for listening, right?
They are, but they can be a valuable tool for improving your speaking too.
Okay, how so?
One technique I suggest is called shadowing. Basically, you listen to a section of the podcast and then try to repeat it exactly as you hear it.
Oh, interesting.
You try to mimic the speaker's pronunciation, intonation, everything.
Like you have a virtual speaking partner.
Precisely. And podcasts are packed with authentic speech examples. Perfect for this. Yeah. You can even choose segments that focus on sounds you find difficult or new vocabulary.
Like your own personal pronunciation coach.
Exactly. And as you practice shadowing, you not only improve your pronunciation, but also your ear for the language.
So you can hear those subtle differences in how words are stressed and the rhythm of the sentences.
Exactly. And that leads to more fluent and natural sounding speech. It's like a win-win.
Your listening and speaking skills work together.
Exactly. Podcasts are a fantastic resource for practicing shadowing with all their different content and speaking styles.
It's like being immersed in the language, but without leaving your home.
Precisely. It moves you beyond just memorizing things and into a more interactive, communicative way of learning.
You become an active participant in the language.
That's a great way to put it. Now, let's say someone's completely new to using podcasts to learn English.
Okay.
What advice would you give them?
That's a great question. Starting anything new can be exciting, but also a bit daunting, especially when it comes to language learning.
Absolutely. But the right approach can make a huge difference. Here are a few things I'd suggest. First, start with podcasts that are made specifically for language learners.
Okay.
They tend to be slower, have clear pronunciation, and explain vocabulary and grammar along the way. Perfect for building a solid foundation.
Makes sense.
Second, choose podcasts that cover topics you're actually interested in.
Yeah, I like that.
Learning is so much more effective and fun when you're genuinely engaged with the content.
Totally agree.
It doesn't matter if it's history, science, true crime, comedy, whatever. Find what you love and go for it. Third, don't be afraid to try different types of podcasts. Stories, interviews, lectures. See what works best for you. Fourth, take advantage of the tools podcast apps offer. Things like speed control, transcripts, vocabulary lists.
Right.
They can be super helpful. Fifth, don't be afraid to make mistakes. Remember, language learning is a journey, not a race.
It's all about the process.
Exactly. Embrace the challenges and those little victories along the way. Sixth, find a language partner or study group to share the experience with.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
It's amazing how much motivation and support you can get from connecting with others who are on the same path. Seventh, set realistic goals. Don't try to do too much too soon, and celebrate those milestones. It'll keep you motivated. And finally, most importantly, have fun. Learning a language should be enjoyable. Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself, embrace the challenges, and savor those small victories.
Those are some fantastic tips. It's all about having the right resources, knowing what you want to achieve, and having a positive mindset.
Absolutely. And podcasts, with their accessibility, variety, and engaging content, they're an amazing starting point for anyone on their language learning journey.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. I'm curious about how podcasts can be used in more formal learning environments, like classrooms or online courses.
Oh yeah, they have so much potential there.
They do.
Podcasts can really shake things up in language education.
How so?
Well, they're a great supplement to traditional teaching methods. For starters, they can be used for listening comprehension activities.
Oh, okay.
Teachers could assign podcast episodes that relate to what they're teaching.
Yeah.
Students could listen at home or in class, and then maybe they could discuss the content, answer questions, or even do grammar exercises based on what they heard.
That makes the learning process a lot more interactive.
Exactly. And podcasts are full of authentic language.
Right.
They expose students to all sorts of different accents and ways of speaking that they wouldn't find in a textbook.
It's like bringing the real world right into the classroom.
Exactly. You could even use podcasts to spark debates.
Oh, interesting.
Pick episodes about controversial topics or current events and let the students discuss and share their opinions.
That's a great way to get them thinking critically and practicing their speaking skills in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. And then there's the possibility of having students create their own podcasts.
Oh, I love that idea.
It's a fantastic way for them to learn. They could explore their interests, do research, conduct interviews, and even pick up some technical skills along the way.
It's like a hands-on language learning project.
Exactly. And lastly, podcasts can help learners connect with other students, maybe even native speakers.
Okay.
Teachers could encourage students to listen to podcasts from different countries and cultures.
Oh, cool.
Maybe even participate in online discussions or language exchanges with other podcast listeners around the world.
It's like building a global language learning community.
Exactly. As podcasts keep evolving, I think they'll become even more important in language education, both in and out of the classroom.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Now, let's go back to AI for a minute.
Sure.
You touched on it earlier, but I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts.
Yeah.
How do you think AI might impact the future of learning English through podcasts?
It's a really interesting question.
It is.
AI and other new technologies have the potential to make language learning truly personalized. Imagine podcasts that can adapt to your level, how much you already know.
Right.
Or podcasts that can even give you feedback on your pronunciation in real time.
That's incredible. It's like having a personal AI tutor built right into the podcast.
Exactly. And AI is getting more advanced all the time,
It is.
so we can expect even more innovation.
Okay.
Think about virtual reality experiences that take you to different countries.
Wow.
You could interact with native speakers in real-life situations,
That would be amazing.
or maybe even have AI language partners.
Right.
You could have natural, spontaneous conversations with them.
It's like the lines between the real world and the digital world are becoming blurred.
Absolutely. And that opens up so many possibilities for language learning. These advancements are really exciting.
They are.
They have the power to make language learning more accessible, effective, and engaging than ever before.
It feels like the future of language learning is unfolding right in front of us,
It is.
and podcasts are leading the way.
I couldn't agree more. I can't wait to see how these technologies will change how we learn and interact with languages in the years to come.
Me too. It's a
What?
constantly evolving landscape. Okay, before we move on to the last part of our deep dive, let's quickly recap what we've talked about today. We explored the ups and downs of using podcasts to learn English,
Right.
shared some practical tips for making the most of them,
Uh-huh.
and even touched on the future of language learning with AI.
We also talked about how important it is to be an active listener, be aware of cultural differences, and most importantly, find those podcasts that really grab your attention and fit your learning style.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. I'm looking forward to sharing some specific podcast recommendations in the next segment. We'll also talk about how to overcome those learning challenges and explore the ever-growing world of language learning resources.
All right, so we've talked a lot about learning English with podcasts, but now I really want to get into some specific recommendations.
Yeah.
There are just so many podcasts out there.
There are.
Where do you even begin?
It's true. It can be overwhelming. If you're just starting out, I always recommend going for podcasts specifically designed for English language learners.
Okay.
They usually have a slower pace, clear pronunciation, and they often explain vocabulary and grammar as they go. It's a great way to build a strong base.
Makes sense. Do you have any examples?
Sure. Some good ones to start with are Learn English Podcast by the British Council, Voice of America, Learning English, and All Ears English.
Okay, those are great starting points. Now, what happens when a learner gets more advanced? Should they stick to those learner-focused podcasts, or can they branch out?
Oh, I think branching out is key. Once you've got the basics down, the world is your oyster. Find podcasts about topics you're truly interested in. It doesn't even matter if they're specifically for language learners or not.
I love that. It makes learning so much more fun when you're passionate about the subject matter.
Exactly. History, science, true crime, comedy, whatever it is you're into, there's a podcast out there for you. And that's when the magic really happens, when you're so engrossed in what you're listening to that you forget you're even learning a language.
It just sneaks in there.
Exactly. Now, what about learners who are struggling with specific things like pronunciation or grammar?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I know I've had my moments with pronunciation.
We all have. Luckily, there are podcasts specifically for those areas.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For pronunciation, there's Sounds Right by the BBC and Espresso English, which breaks down those tricky sounds and gives you tips for improvement.
Those sound helpful. What about grammar? I feel like I'm constantly second-guessing myself on grammar rules.
Grammar can be tricky, but there are definitely podcasts out there to help you. Grammar Girl's Quick and Dirty Tips for Better Writing is a popular one.
Okay.
And there's also 6 Minute Grammar by the BBC, which gives these short and sweet explanations of grammar rules.
So there really is a podcast for everything. It's like having a personalized language learning toolkit. Now, I want to talk about podcasts that can help learners go beyond just vocabulary and grammar. You know, the ones that really immerse you in actual conversations and culture.
Yes, immersion is so important. You want to get a feel for how the language is really spoken.
Exactly.
Podcasts like The English We Speak by the BBC are great for that.
Yeah.
They look at everyday expressions and slang, giving you a taste of real-world English.
That sounds really useful, especially for learners who want to sound more natural and less like they're reading from a textbook.
Absolutely. And then there are storytelling podcasts like This American Life and Serial.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of those.
They pull you in with these captivating stories that give you a glimpse into American culture and different perspectives.
It's like you're experiencing the culture firsthand through these stories.
Precisely. And if you're interested in specific accents or dialects, there are tons of podcasts for that too.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Well, BBC Radio 4 has a bunch of shows with different British accents.
Right.
And Stuff You Should Know has a very distinct American Southern accent.
It's amazing how much variety there is. Okay, let's switch gears to strategies. What are some tips for getting the most out of podcasts for language learning?
That's a great question. One thing I strongly suggest is using transcripts.
Okay.
A lot of podcast websites and apps offer them so you can read along as you listen. This is especially useful if you're a beginner or if you're struggling to understand everything by ear.
It's like having subtitles, but for audio.
Exactly. And it's really important to actively listen.
What do you mean by that?
Don't just passively listen. Really engage with the content. Take notes, pause, and think about what you just heard. You can even repeat phrases out loud to practice your pronunciation.
It's about turning the podcast into an interactive experience.
Exactly. And another thing you can try is playing with the playback speed. Lots of apps let you slow down or speed up the audio. If a podcast is too fast, just slow it down until you're comfortable. Then, as you improve, you can gradually increase the speed.
It's like having a personalized language learning control panel. Now, you mentioned consistency earlier. How important is it to actually listen to podcasts regularly?
Consistency is key, just like with any skill. Language learning needs regular practice.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Try to make podcasts a part of your daily routine.
Okay.
Even if it's just for a few minutes each day, the more you expose yourself to the language, the more it'll become second nature.
It's like working out a muscle, right?
Exactly. Now, as we wrap things up, I want to leave our listeners with a question to think about. We've talked about how AI could change the way we learn languages. How do you picture the future of learning English through podcasts with all these advancements in AI and technology?
That's a great question. It's exciting to imagine the possibilities. Maybe we'll see AI-powered podcasts that can tailor the content to your specific needs and goals.
Yeah.
Or virtual reality experiences that let you practice speaking in real-world situations. The future of language learning is full of potential, and I believe podcasts will continue to be at the forefront of making language learning more accessible and fun for everyone. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. All right, so today we're going to dive into something kind of different.
Okay.
We're going to be looking at how you can improve your English
Okay.
by listening to people just chatting about swimming.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we've got some clips we're going to listen to,
Okay.
and then we're going to kind of like break down the language they're using.
All right, sounds good.
So in this first clip, we're going to hear two English speakers
Yeah.
talking about different swimming styles.
Okay.
So as you listen, pay attention
Yeah.
to the kinds of words they're using, like what verbs and adjectives,
I see.
and see if you notice anything interesting, like any double meanings.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's dive in and take a listen.
All right.
Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So they talked about the doggy paddle,
Right.
the breaststroke, and the backstroke.
Yeah, those are the classics.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And like even if you already know these swimming styles,
Right?
did you notice how they were using language to like
Yeah.
really paint a picture of what it looks like?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like you could almost see them swimming.
Exactly like when they said arms pulling
Mm-hmm.
and legs kicking and like gliding through the water.
Yes, exactly. And thinking about that,
Yeah.
like even if you're not a swimmer,
Uh-huh.
just understanding those verbs and adjectives
Right?
can help you describe all kinds of actions and movements in English.
Absolutely.
So it's all about making those connections
yeah.
and expanding your vocabulary.
For sure.
You know, I got to say, though, the doggy paddle always makes me laugh.
Yeah.
It's like such a basic way of staying afloat.
Yeah.
Like we revert back to our primal instincts
Totally.
when we get in the water.
But you know what's funny is that the term doggy paddle is also like a metaphor in English.
Oh, really?
Like you might hear someone say,
Right.
he's just doggy paddling his way through this project.
Oh, that's funny.
Meaning like he's not really excelling,
Right.
but he's managing to stay afloat.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like a swimming term, but with a whole other meaning in a different context.
It is.
It's like learning a language is about more than just the words.
Right.
It's about how you can use them
Yeah,
in
exactly.
creative ways.
Yeah, that's where the fun is.
I know, right? So anything else stand out to you from that clip?
Well, actually, I was thinking about the phrase "for a little while." They used it when they were talking about swimming,
Right.
but you could use it for, like, anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Like reading for a little while or working for a little while.
Right.
It's so versatile.
Yeah.
You can just use it for so many things.
Yeah, it's like a little tool
It is.
that you can keep in your back pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's a good reminder that sometimes you
Yeah.
don't need fancy vocabulary
You
to
don't.
speak English well.
No, you just need the basics.
Right. And you know, it's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking
Yeah.
about the word towards.
Oh, yeah.
Like when they said swimming towards the shore.
Yeah,
It's such a small word,
it is.
but it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
You know, like imagine if they just said swim in the shore.
Yeah, that just sounds wrong.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
And I think prepositions are like that.
Yeah, they're really important.
They're so important, but they're easy to overlook.
Right, they are.
Okay, so before we move on,
Yeah.
I want to go back to the breaststroke for a second.
Okay.
They described it as being almost like a frog.
Right.
And that got me thinking,
Yeah.
like, do you think there are cultural differences
Mm.
in how people see and describe swimming styles?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah,
I think you might be right because different cultures have different swimming traditions.
exactly.
So it makes sense that their language would reflect that.
Yeah, like maybe someone from Japan
Uh-huh.
would describe the breaststroke completely differently than
Yeah.
someone from the U.S.
Totally.
That's a really cool thought.
It is.
Okay, but let's stay focused on this clip for now. We've got another one coming up. This one's a little more dramatic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they're going to
Okay.
tell a story about a boating accident.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So get ready for some vivid storytelling.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay.
All right.
All right, so we'll come back to that in
Yeah.
the next part of the deep dive.
Sounds good.
So stay tuned.
Okay. Okay, so are you ready for this story?
Yeah, I want to hear about this boating accident.
All right, well, let's give it a listen.
Okay.
Here we go.
So they crashed.
Yeah, two boats crashed right into each other
Oh my gosh.
in the lake.
Wow, that sounds scary.
Yeah, and then the engine like fell off one of the boats.
Wait.
Yeah, it like fell down to the bottom of the lake,
Oh man.
and they had to hire scuba divers to get it out.
That's crazy.
It is pretty crazy.
Well, at least nobody was hurt.
Yeah, that's the important thing.
I know, and the way they described it was so vivid.
I know, right?
Like I could practically see it happening.
Yeah, it's like they use such simple words,
Yeah.
but it was so effective.
Yeah, like when they said flipped over
Right.
and crashed and fell down to the bottom.
Exactly.
It's like those words are so powerful
They are.
when you use them in the right way.
Right. And, you know, it's like a good reminder
Right.
that you don't always need to use fancy vocabulary
That's true.
to make your English sound good.
Exactly. You can use simple words
Yeah.
and still tell a really great story.
Exactly.
And, you know, I noticed they used the word towards again.
Yeah.
Like when they said he was driving straight towards the island when suddenly it just makes it so clear
Yeah.
where the boat was going.
It does.
Prepositions are so important.
I know.
Okay, so now I have a question for you.
Okay.
What if you were telling this story?
Hmm.
What details would you focus on?
That's a good question.
Yeah, would you use the same words?
I don't know.
Or would you describe it differently?
Probably a little differently.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own way of telling a story.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes language so cool.
I know.
There are so many ways to express yourself.
Exact.
So it's all about finding what works for you.
Yeah, find your own voice.
Okay, so we've talked about swimming styles.
Yes, we have.
We've heard a story about a boating accident.
Uh-huh.
What else can we learn from all of this?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that you can learn a lot about English
Yeah,
just from listening to people talk.
that's true.
Like even a simple conversation about swimming
Right.
can teach you so much.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be boring.
No, not at all.
It can be really fun
Right.
and engaging.
It can't.
All right, so we're going to wrap things up in the next part
Okay.
of the deep dive.
So it's good.
So stick around. All right, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
And we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, we have.
We talked about different swimming styles.
Right.
We analyzed some vocabulary.
Uh,
And we even heard that crazy story
yeah.
about the boating accident.
That was a good one. It was, and I think it's amazing how much we can learn
Yeah.
about English
Wow.
just from a simple chat about swimming.
Exactly.
You know, like we talk about how verbs and adjectives
Right.
can really bring a story to life.
They can.
And we saw how useful a phrase,
Yeah.
like for a little while,
Yeah.
can be.
That's like a little magic phrase.
It is. And then, of course, there are prepositions.
Right. Those little words that make a big difference.
Exactly, like chords.
Exactly.
So important.
There.
And you know what else really stood out to me?
What's that?
Was how they used humor.
Oh, yeah.
Like when they were talking about the scuba divers,
Uh-huh.
it just made the whole story more engaging.
It did.
So, yeah, I think we've learned a lot today.
I think so, too.
And I hope you have too.
Yeah, me too.
So thanks for joining us for this deep dive,
It's been fun.
and we'll see you next time.